Welcome to the MHFi podcast. My name is Carl Jensen, and I'm here with my co-host.
I'm Doug Cunnington.
And we have two guests today. Tell us who you are and what you do.
I'm Lauren Keys. This is my husband, Stephen Keys. And we have a blog, it's tripofolifestyle.com. And we retired, what do you say last year, I guess?
I guess it depends on how you count it exactly.
Yeah.
But we're transitioning out of the working phase of our life, or at least the full-time working phase.
Working is mostly
of our
over
life,
now.
So. Yeah, and we just we blog about like personal finance and cheap travel and keeping your expenses low and stuff.
Awesome. And you guys are pretty modest because I have a whole a page worth of stuff I could intro you with. So I'll just do a little bit. So you guys semi-retired at age 29 with relatively modest salaries. And we say semi-retired just to watch ourselves because you guys do a few hours of work per week-ish.
So I still work about 10 hours-ish a week, and Lauren mostly does not work anymore. But
like maybe an hour.
Yes.
Outside of our blog.
And you drove to Alaska right after college, and then in 2019, you visited all 63 national parks in about 7 months. You took a mini retirement in Kona, Hawaii for 6 months a few years before that, and many other cool things. But I want to focus on this national parks trip, and I'm just curious if you have any interesting stories from that 7-month period.
Yeah, so when we started in 2019, I know that was a few years ago for everybody, but the government was actually shut down in the beginning of 2019, and if anyone remembers that, and that's when we were planning to start our trip. So we did, in fact, start on the road with the government shut down, and so one of the first few parks we went to was Big Bend in Texas, and a lot of areas were kind of blocked off because they were trying to keep tourists out of certain areas that they weren't able to clean up after because they didn't have staff, etc. And so we were on a mission to still see as much as we could. And so there was a road that looked like it went down to the Rio Grande. It said 4-wheel drive only. We did not heed that warning. And we drove on that road anyway. Pretty gravelly experience, and then we took a turn and we got stuck. And so we were like, well, okay, there's no cell phone service here. Our phones keep trying to tell us you're really close to Mexico, and we're like, don't connect to Mexico. And we're taking huge flat boulders, trying to dig out the wheels and shove the rocks under so we could back up, because going in it was okay, but this turn was just not okay. So we were kind of in a gorge, and so we climbed up to the top of this plateau, and we're hopefully there's internet here and cell phone service. And so we got a signal, called AAA, very faint signal, and they're like, yeah, we'll try to send somebody. And as we were waiting up on this hill, because down below, definitely no service, we were just trying to keep an eye out on the road. We saw a truck coming, and we're like, maybe we should just stop this guy. And so it's just this single dude who has one day off. He's a random worker in the area. And we were like, hey, could you help us? And so he happened to be able to, he had a towing line, and he wenched us out, and he was like, yeah, that's fine. He was super chill, pretty sure he was going to the woods or the desert there to probably do some drugs, because he was very, very chill. And we're like, oh, what are you doing? And he was very vague about what he was doing on his day off. So he got us out to the edge where the real road was. We gave him $20 and we were on our way. But that was probably the craziest. We took a picture of being very sad at our van, not being able to move it.
We spent a good hour and a half trying to dig it out.
Yeah, digging it out was not a fun
and
experience. It was so hot.
Super hot.
Yeah. And we didn't want to run the van either, because just running it wouldn't be good on the engine either. And so we were just trying to stay in the shade, but trying to also be up on the hill.
That was the last 4-wheel drive only road that we took our front wheel drive city Nissan NV200 van onto.
Although we have taken it on many gravelly forest roads with huge divots and rocks and stuff sticking out. And as long as it's solid enough that we don't get stuck, it's been okay. We've taken it on some sketch roads, but never just 4-wheel drive again.
I actually thought about you two a couple days ago, because I had known you had some kind of Nissan camper van, but I had never seen it. And I was walking around Loveland a couple days ago, and there was some big ass like Nissan thing that I've never seen before. It's jacked up. It had big tires. You two might know what it is. And I was wondering, I'm like, I wonder if that's Lauren. I wonder if that's their van right there. But then I saw your actual van, and it is not. If you had this other one, I think you probably could have driven across the Rio Grande and up Mount Everest as well.
I think that's a Nissan NV 2500. And every time we go to like Advanced Auto Parts to get like a new battery or like whatever, or go get an oil change or something, we always tell them Nissan NV 200, and they're like, do you mean Nissan NV 2500? Because like apparently no one's ever heard of our van before.
Yeah, I feel like it's an uncommon van, but it's about the same size as, what is it, the Ford Transit Connect?
Yeah,
and that one's really popular for van life because it's small and like affordable, but like no one knows about this Nissan.
Yeah, the Nissan's just not as popular for some reason, but it's like pretty much the same thing as the Transit Connect. Yeah,
gotcha. And I'm pretty sure I saw another NV200 today that somebody was traveling in, because they had bike racks on the back and just kind of had that look, although pretty incognito. And I was like, oh, another NV200. Now I see them all the time.
Yes. And once you like have seen one, you start noticing them like everywhere. And they're mostly, the most common ones that I see are ones that are like wrapped and they're for business. So like
delivery.
Yeah. Like they'll, food delivery or like flower delivery or whatever. I see them a lot of times for businesses.
Ours is red. We've only seen one other red one ever in the wild. We pulled up to a state park one time.
In Florida, right?
And we literally parked right next to an identical red
took a picture.
Nissan NV200. And we looked in to see, like,
it was
is
empty.
it a camper? Completely empty. There was, like, a book, and, like, that was it. There was nothing in the van.
It was just the cargo area, and we're like, I wonder if they actually put cargo in here and not themselves like we do.
But it was at a state park, so it was kind of weird.
We hiked and we came back and I was like, we should wait for them and see like if they're van people, but they were like we waited for like 5 minutes and I was like, never mind.
I think we left a card for our blog on their
I think I wrote like we're twins or something and I put it on their
I don't know, with an empty cargo area, it's like they were dumping a body.
Could be that, yeah.
That's the only logical explanation I could come up with.
Yeah, same.
All right, that's an easy way to transition into your FI journey. So you retired at 29. When did you discover FI? Did you think it was a scam? Take us through the process here.
I guess like it all started when we graduated from college and we were kind of on our own, I guess, or completely more on our own, or thinking about jobs and careers more. And so
it felt more like that to me because you were going to grad school, so you probably still felt some level of being a student, but I was like fully not a student anymore.
But yeah, it just felt like real adulthood, no college anymore.
And we moved across the country for grad school too, so that probably felt like a big sever, being that all of our family's in Florida. So
yeah, and our pay was pretty low at the time, and fortunately though, like we're just like pretty frugal by nature, I guess, and so we kind of automatically already had started out with living expenses that were lower than what we were making, even though we weren't making much. So we had money just piling up, right? Because that's what happens when you spend less than you earn. And so that got us curious about investing. So that was kind of the first question mark, is like, well, money is piling up. What do we do with it? Invest. And we kind of came up with this idea of like, okay, well, if you invest money and that pays a return, then eventually, like it seems kind of obvious, eventually the returns eclipse however much you need to live, and that must be what retirement is, right? Like, I mean, that is what retirement is, right? So we kind of had that like vague idea. And then one day, Lauren...
Well, I was at work. You were probably at the beach, because he liked to skip his classes when we were living in California.
I was a pretty bad PhD student.
You were done. I wasn't going to tell you that you were done because that was your own decision you needed to make. But like I knew, like he shouldn't be in school anymore.
Long story short, on that, I quit my PhD program. But
yes, but I was at work and I was like, I saw a news article about Pete, Mr. Money Mustache, and I was like, whoa, someone's actually done the thing that we were just talking about. Like that's a real life example of a human being who actually did this, and he was like way more adult than we were, like,
and a lot faster than we thought that it would be possible to do it.
In his 30s, like, whoa, that's only like 9 years from now or whatever. Like, could we do something similar? And he even like had a kid, and like, it seemed very, whatever route our life took, like, well, if someone else can do it, I can do it. Like that's kind of how I face a lot of things in life. So
yeah, and it was just cool to see that example. And then actually, she found the blog. Yeah. I started reading it like a crazy, mad person. And honestly, just seeing the math and seeing like, oh, well, like, yeah, this is this isn't like a far-fetched crazy thing. This is like, if you just take how investing works to its logical end with like saving a lot of money, then yeah, like obviously this should work. And so we like believed it immediately. We definitely didn't think it was a scam at all. And we got really excited about it. And it was nice to have someone out there, even though we didn't know this person, but it was nice to know like, oh, there's like a person who's done this before. So we have like a blueprint to follow kind of. So.
And that's when we also started tracking our net worth, which definitely helped us like keep on track. We were like, you know, now that we have let's put some numbers around it, let's start, you know, making it more real. And I think tracking our net worth every month really kind of solidified our goal and kept us kind of accountable to that goal and gamified it a little bit, made it fun and not scammy at all.
Yeah. So when we started, like, since we had, you know, close to zero net worth starting out, whatever the change in our net worth was each month approximates how much income we didn't spend, right? So it's easy to figure out, like, is saving 50% or 75% or whatever, is that possible? And so it turned out that, yes, that's pretty possible. And then as time goes on, you know, your net worth swings like crazy with the market because it gets bigger and has more effect with that. But early on, that was really helpful for us to see.
Mm-hmm.
So how long did you both work for? Not that long if you're semi-retired at 29 and you both went to postgraduate school.
I didn't go to graduate school, but just Steven did. But yeah.
So we started... So you started full-time in 2012 when I went to grad school. I was only in grad school for 9 months before I dropped out. Well, okay. I'll give myself a little bit of credit. I dropped out of my PhD program. I then picked up a master's program, and that master's program was for teaching. Fair. And so this master's program was free tuition if you agreed to be a high school teacher at a local school district for at least 1 year. And you get the full salary and benefits while you do it as well.
Long story short, we moved back across the country.
To Florida.
That was a program in Florida. We moved to California. 9 months later, we moved back to Florida.
The short answer to your question is, I guess, full-time working, including a couple of small sabbaticals as well. 7 to 7.5 years, something like that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. One of the big knocks against the whole FI movement is it's just a bunch of tech bros, like a bunch of dudes who have high paying, high power software jobs. And you're coming at it from the opposite. You both were teachers, so the opposite of a tech bro as far as salary. So it's neat to see that example for people.
I was a teacher. Lauren was in marketing and made like pretty close to the same salary that I was making.
Okay.
But yeah, it's true though. So I mean, if you want to spend like $50K plus a year on your journey to FI, then you kind of do need to make 6-figure salaries to make that work, unless you're going to want to do it in like 20 or 30 years on a longer time horizon. So if you want to retire in 7 or 8 years and you want to do it on a low salary, you have to keep your expenses extremely low. So I would say we definitely were on like the very low end in expenses compared to like, I guess, the average of the FI community. But yeah.
Wait, and I'll jump in because I don't want people to think like you have to be super frugal and all that stuff. So you do publish that your annual expenses are about $28,000 or so per year.
So now that we're like kind of retired, they are. And part of that is because we pay for health insurance fully out of pocket, which is over $6,000 a year, I think. So really, if we like had full-time jobs or when we were working, our expenses ranged from $18,000 to $22,000 a year combined for the both of us. But we had health insurance provided by work. So our expenses are much higher now that we pay for health insurance.
And then the other thing I'll throw in, so excellent point. And then the other part is you own the home that you live in. You don't have a mortgage, right?
Correct.
So that wasn't true when we started, but now,
it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But we did.
For the last, 5 or so years, 6?
Well, in Gainesville, we
owned.
owned. 5
to 6 years, we've had a mortgage-free house.
Okay. So, and the point is, so it's $28,000. You are paying for healthcare. You're not including any sort of, I guess, mortgage cost. You still have to pay taxes, insurance, and all that stuff. The point being, if you had to pay for housing, it would be a little bit more. So we hear 28,000, we're like, oh man, that's so low. It would probably be like, I don't know, 40 or something if you paid for housing.
I don't think that that's quite true. So if we go back to like the years when we were renting, like when we lived in Orlando and I was a teacher, we were renting. Our combined expenses, including rent and everything, were about $22,000 at that time. So our rent was like, I want to say like $850 to $900 a month, something like that.
It was a 1-bedroom apartment, so
Yeah.
Florida's pretty
Yeah.
affordable, and I do recommend it. And there's no state income tax either for people who are pursuing FI. I think Florida's a great state for that.
yeah, there's a lot of pockets of low cost of living, but still access to like decent jobs and things like that, especially now with remote work too.
But to finish the thought, like if we had $22,000 combined expenses back then, that was around 2013. It's now 2021, 8 years later. So if you adjust for inflation on the 22,000, I think you get about an accurate number for today. So my guess is that somewhere in the 26, 27,000 off the top of my head. I don't know for sure, but that would be my guess for like combined equivalent expenses today with rent.
Okay. And I like how we can dive into details so deep. Carl, do you have any thoughts on that?
I've got one follow-up question. I think the two things that the two major expenses that most people have on their way to FI is probably housing. We talked about that, but the other one is transportation. Some people, we were just talking to someone like this week who was like, I got laid off, but I had to pay off my husband's truck. Like he bought a brand new truck, but these people are both laid off. Like, what the fuck do you need this truck for? You don't have jobs. What did you all do for transportation?
So we always actually shared one car. After graduating college, we sold my car before we moved across the country, and then we've only just had the one since Stephen went to grad school. And in California, we lived on campus, so it was very easy for Stephen to bike around. And then I also tested with such great weather in Southern California, biking myself, because I was probably like a couple of miles, 3-ish, 4 miles
like
from
3 miles
work.
from work.
And so for me, that was like pretty doable too, especially with good weather in California. So when we came back to Florida, although the weather wasn't great, Stephen continued to ride his bike. We lived, also like a few miles from the school you ended up teaching at. And then I drove to work because my work was a little bit further away. But yeah, we've just had one car. And so like now that we have this camper van, that's also our only car. So sometimes when we like get groceries and we loading them in our van, people are like, what's going on back there? And, sometimes I do live here. It's fine.
And to give some context, like I like numbers because people are probably like doing the math at home, thinking about how this works out. To give some context to the cars, like I rode a bike pretty much exclusively to work for 7 years or so straight. And that car that we shared, there were several cars, but the average price paid for those used vehicles was around $3,500 each. So that's all of our cars we've ever owned, excluding the camper van.
The van was our most expensive vehicle by far.
We were intentionally driving what people would call crappy cars to save a lot of money. And that's really just mainly because neither one of us cares about cars like at all.
Yeah. So we were just buying cheap used cars outright, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. So it sounds like you didn't have to make any big adjustments because you were living like college students, which you were roughly around that time. And yeah, I guess, did you have to make any big adjustments generally?
So that's the thing that for us, like everyone is always like, well, how do I like adapt my lifestyle to make it fit this FI thing and then do this early retirement thing? And we realized like, well, we never had to do that because we did live like college students in college. And then we just continued to live like college students because we were really happy with that lifestyle. Like we enjoyed college a lot.
Yeah.
And so one of the main goals with our blog is to reach people at that age. We would really like to reach like 21-year-olds because we feel like you can reach FI with like none of the difficulty or almost none of the difficulty if you start then, at least the emotional difficulty.
Yeah. Like I think a big, checkbox, one of the first big checkboxes that people get, real job and then like real car. But like that's a huge misstep for a lot of young people to take on this huge car payment that like for what benefit? Like your previous car runs, like what, like to impress other people or like, it's a tough thing. And then once you get used to a certain level of luxury, it's definitely harder to ratchet that back down. And the same is true of housing.
Yeah. And like with cars, like we like to tell people, we think 0.5 cars per adult is a reasonable number of cars. But if you tell that to someone who's always had their own car, it's going to be really hard for them to accept. But a college kid who's riding the bus to class or taking a bike, they're like, cool, I get 0.5 cars. That's great.
Right. yeah, we've had people like reach out and be like, yeah, I don't even own a car because like I don't need it. Like a lot of, I mean, I know people that like we went to college with who didn't even have a car during college and like never got their license until like post college.
Yeah.
Wow. So Mr. Money Mustache was sort of the initial influence. Were there other either bloggers or books that you found inspiring or helpful along the way?
So I read A Simple Path to Wealth very late on in the FIRE journey. Really just because I like find the topic interesting. And I think it's a great book, and I love J.L. Collins. But I found him kind of late on.
Yeah.
Or we found him kind of late on. But he's a super cool guy, and he has lots of really great content.
Yeah, and like index, like our first foray into the stock market wasn't actually into index funds because we didn't learn about those until after we started putting some money into an investment account.
we made one bad investment to start with, and then we were like
Quickly remedied
sworn
that.
onto index funds from then on out.
Okay. Yeah. Would you want to share that?
Sure. Yeah, our first investment was
At the
under
bank.
the advice of a Chase Bank fee-based, like commission-based advisor. His advice for us, for some reason, as 22-year-olds, was to put our $10,000 that we had to invest into an actively managed bond fund. And the load fee on that actively managed bond fund, I think, was 3% or something like that. I don't remember exactly. The ticker is PTTAX. It's a PIMCO fund. But yeah, it had a big fat load fee, a nice hefty expense ratio, lots of commission for that guy.
Yeah.
We probably eked out a nice like negative 2% return or so before we quit on that and put it into something else.
Yeah.
But an invaluable lesson that you'll never forget.
Yeah. And not all advisors are gonna lead you that far astray, but that's the importance of doing some due diligence yourself and knowing what you're doing, not just trusting someone else.
And don't go to a commission-based advisor.
Yeah.
That's the big one.
It's tough. Yeah. The incentives just don't align, and it's hard to trust people like that. So
Yeah.
sorry, financial advisors.
I thought you were going to say annuity, which might be slightly worse, but not that much worse. That might have given you a little bit of return.
That would have been pretty bizarre too for a 22-year-old.
Yeah.
So what was the biggest challenge along the way looking back?
So, I guess like we mentioned before, like the challenges that people usually cite of like getting used to this new lifestyle or whatever, we kind of skipped over all that stuff. So for us, like, I think the challenge was convincing people that we know that
we
weren't crazy. And also that we were actually enjoying our lives and we were having fun. People almost like didn't want to believe that like we drive around this crappy beater that
And
we
like
share and like we're enjoying life. But like that really was the truth. And
yeah, people would be like, live a little or something. And we're like, I mean, I do, like every weekend we go do something, we ride our bikes and like that is fun. Sorry if you view that as like not fun. I don't know. Like it was definitely a weird position to be in, to be like defending your lifestyle when like I feel like we're making such great strides, and then, like,
and nobody told you like don't save a lot of money. That's bad, because obviously no one's gonna say that, right? But they're kind of saying that though, because they're saying like, well, you should be spending more money,
right?
And like that's kind of the same thing as saying don't save a lot of money, right? And I think as long as you're happy with your lifestyle, any savings rate is fine. If you want to save 80% of your income, save 80% of your income. If you can do that and live a happy life, do it.
Yeah.
And you can. I mean, so. Yeah.
Well, and that leads to sort of another question. Like, were people actively discouraging you from like quitting work, or as you got closer? I mean, any sort of issues like that?
I don't necessarily feel that we were discouraged about like FI or our goals to, I mean, there's always like semantics arguments, right? About like what is retirement, and everyone has that for their entire life. If you like golf too much, maybe you're not retired. I don't know. But I would say like in terms of quitting our jobs was probably more of the backlash than like saving money. And
I don't think anyone believed we were going to like retire when we were 22 or 24 or 26. Like they were just like, yeah, they save a lot of money and they drive a crappy car and that's fine.
Yeah.
So by the time we were ready to like step back from work, I think it was like we had done a bunch of interesting stuff, and we'd taken 6 months off here and 7 months off there, and I don't know, it almost maybe seems normal to people we know now that like we don't work as much. But the one thing that we did, I remember getting some pushback on, I don't even remember who it was from, was that we took like a 6-month mini retirement when we were nowhere near fire.
We had FU money.
That was in 2015, and we took 6 months off, and somebody, I actually don't remember who it was, told me, like, you can't do that. Like, you're going to have a resume gap of 6 months, and you're just new to your career. In this resume gap, no employer will ever touch you again after you get back from this 6 months off. You're going to ruin your career. And I ignored that advice immediately, like immediately ignored it. But it turned out to be the worst advice I have ever received, because when we got back from those 6 months off in 2015, we both nearly doubled our salaries by job hopping. So
yeah, the job hopping was definitely like the like boon to our success, I feel like. And, you know, I think for us, our 6 months that we took off to go to Hawaii, that's what we did at that time early in our careers. Like, I don't know, I'm always very optimistic, and I'm like, I can just spin this however I want. Like, no one's gonna be mad at me. I'm gonna tell them why it was a good thing and makes me a better employee, and then they'll just still hire me. So like, I don't know, I never had any like fear about that.
yeah,
but
think we both
it was
just ignored
very
that.
good for us to have done that, in fact, because otherwise we would probably have not had reached the salaries that we did.
The resume gap thing is like really popular advice though, and I just want to say, like, on the record, it is total BS. It doesn't even make sense when you think about it. Like, imagine you're the employer and someone comes to you and says, hey, I was a great employee here, I stayed for this many years, you can call them, I have references, whatever, and by the way, I'm a really diligent saver and I took 6 months off just for myself, and now I'm ready to get back to it. How does that person not sound like someone you want to hire? I think that sounds like a responsible, smart person. But, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, and I remember back in my corporate job, and I interviewed a lot of people too, and I know some of the older managers that I had, like, they kept leaning on how things were many years ago, and it wasn't even accurate then. It's less accurate now, right? If you don't have a gap in your resume, like these days, it would almost seem a little bit weird, especially with the pandemic and everything.
Yeah, sure.
Like, people would be impressed if you happen to be able to stay employed the whole time.
True.
Yeah.
So, yeah. What do you think?
Yeah, I've heard that same advice too from many people, but whenever I hear it, it's always from someone probably over 60 years of age, and you can't have a gap in your resume, da 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 da. And I think maybe in their generation it was more of a thing, because you'd get a job in one place, Acme razor factory or whatever, you'd work there from 25 to 65, get your watch, move to Florida, and die. And now it's different. It's the gig economy. People are doing all kinds of different shit. And I think you alluded to this. It's actually a positive, because you are using that time to recharge, or maybe to study, or to read, or
Become better in some way.
yeah, reinvigorate yourself. So now I think it's a good thing. And I would think less of someone who just worked their ass off and never took any kind of breaks or something like that. I would think maybe there's something wrong with that person.
And after that first 6 months off that we took, I can honestly say, like, I did come back reinvigorated. I was like ready to work, and we worked really hard for those next few years, like harder than before. Even,
I think we were just like excited that, you know, we that trip was kind of a mini retirement. We got to kind of test drive what it would be like to be retired. And I think that really solidified this plan for us, right? Like, I think, you know, you hear, especially in like the fire community, like, you have to have something to retire to, and like, don't just sit on your ass. And like, for us, you know, we made a list of everything we want to do while we were in Hawaii. Every day we woke up, consulted the refrigerator list, set out to do something fun, you know? And I think that having those kind of self-directed days really got us, like, I don't know, excited about, like, well, if we just work even harder, we can get to this point again, even faster. And so I think that was kind of, you know, the impetus for us was like, this was great. Good job.
Yeah, like, we didn't get
we got
bored,
there.
so
yeah.
let's
keep doing this.
keep
This was the
going
right thing.
until- Yeah.
Well, let's go a little deeper into that 6 month period, because it sounds very expensive. I've been to Hawaii, the Big Island as well, loved it. And I think I was there for 11 days or something like that. And I would love to go back. How'd you do it for 6 months, and how much did it cost you net worth wise, since you were tracking that at the time?
So our big clickbait title on our website is that it cost us $0, which of course it didn't really cost us $0. But what's meant by that is
Net worth change.
Yeah, the net change in our net worth was approximately $0. It was actually like plus $1,000.
It was plus $1,000 from our car.
Over the course of that 6 months. And so, yeah, the way we achieved that was keeping our living expenses low. So like first of all, that 6 months was supposed to be our honeymoon.
Yeah.
That's what we had decided was our honeymoon after getting married.
We had been saving so hard prior to that. That was that time that Stephen was a teacher. I was making approximately the same, maybe a little less in salary. And so we were saving very hard. And it, in analyzing the traditional honeymoon, we were like, this is a significant portion of how much we save, how much we make. And like, it feels really bad to just blow it on a vacation. And so we were like, what are some ways to not
spend $2 or $4 grand
on like a week
vacation,
or two,
which is like a normal thing to do. It seemed crazy when that's 10 or 20% of what you spend in a year, right? So yeah, I mean, our idea basically was this. It was take our current lifestyle, which is very, very frugal, and we're happy with it, and just move it somewhere else that's very interesting, and try to replicate approximately the same living expenses there. And we were like, okay, let's do Hawaii. We've never been there. We know nothing.
Yeah, we just flew there blind.
I gotta say, that decision, we didn't even consider other locations. We were just like, one
Hawaii.
of us was just like, hey, does Hawaii sound pretty cool? And we were like, never even Googled Hawaii before, but yeah, that sounds great. Let's move there for 6 months.
Yeah.
And like, that was the extent of the conversation.
We didn't even know what island we wanted to live on. Like, we flew into Oahu because we had a friend there. We like stayed with them for like literally a few days because we were like, this is awful. Like, we got to get out. It's so crowded. And so everyone told us like, oh, the Big Island is so like country. And we're like, I mean, how country is country? And we got there and we're like, this is a normal amount of civilization. Like, I don't know what people are talking about.
We also learned that real estate and rent are much cheaper on the Big Island of Hawaii. And so, like, long story short, we found that our expenses before moving to Hawaii in Orlando or around that $22,000 a year. And then we have an expense breakdown of Hawaii on the blog somewhere, so I might misquote this slightly, but it was in the $22,000 to $24,000 per year range equivalent.
It was like $1,880 a month, I think, were our
$1,880 a month?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
So I took a look at that.
And so those were our expenses in Hawaii for 6 months. So our mindset going into it was like, all right, this is supposed to be a break from work. We're not going to go hard and try to save 50 or 80% of our income or whatever while we're there. But let's at least do enough, like little freelance stuff, to just pay that $1,880 a month and try to just come away from Hawaii with the same amount of money as we set off with. And that's exactly what we did.
Yeah, it was very surprising that like rent in Orlando was like 8 something, right? Rent in Hawaii across from the beach was like 9 something. And I was like, I'm living in Orlando.
We were
Like,
literally...
I can't believe I've been living in Orlando, Florida for 2 years when you could be living in Hawaii.
We were across the street from the ocean.
Yeah, you could hear it at night. You could see it during the day, certain angles.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
It was really awesome. Definitely recommend.
Ed, you were in Kona on the Big Island, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool. And that's on the western side, right? I went there for my honeymoon, but
Yes.
only for like 4 days. You did it a much better way than we did.
Yes, that's it's on the west side. It's where like the Ironman competitions are held. It's the dry side, but while we were there, we went like we've driven across that island so much.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time there.
Yeah,
it was great though. There's so much to explore.
Yeah, that list was really nice though. Making a little list and picking stuff off, and sometimes it'd be late at night, and we're like, "Do you want to just like drive into the mountains and like stargaze, and then like come home at sunrise?" Like we can.
Also, a financial win while we were there. We buy these cheap used cars and then just get rid of them, and we share them the whole time. So we bought a little 2-seat cherry red Mazda Miata.
It was so cute,
and we paid $4,500 for it, which is like a whole nother story, actually, how that happened. But at the end of the trip, we ended up selling it for $5,600. And so it's interesting because obviously cars are not good investments. I'm not suggesting that you should try to buy cars and then drive them a while and then sell them for more. It's usually not going to work that way. Maybe in today's economy because the prices are so inflated on used cars right now. But But it's interesting that when you only drive a car for a short period of time, like 6 months, the value is like approximately the same as when you bought it, right? You barely put any miles on it. So if you do one of these like 6 month sabbatical things and you purchase a car for cash, you probably will get close to all your money out of it at the end. And it worked out even better than that for us.
That was kind of our approach to a lot of stuff. Like we bought used bikes on Craigslist and then we sold them back when we were done. They weren't in any worse shape.
We got 100% of our money back out of the bikes.
On the bikes. And then like our furniture. So like
furniture.
I feel like I'm pretty sure our neighbors were like, these poor kids, because like literally, because we had like our only furniture, we never bought a couch because we were like, we're not gonna like sit, like we had a bed, but we're not gonna like buy a couch because then what are we gonna do with it? Like I'm not dealing with all that. So we had a folding table and chairs from Walmart for like $50 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then we just sold it when we were done and like someone bought it. It was also barely used.
Our apartment did not come with air conditioning.
Yeah, that's the thing.
So we did buy 2 portable AC units. We ended up
one because we had 2 in California.
We bought 2 and we returned 1 because we decided we didn't need to.
Yeah,
that's right. And so we had a portable AC in our bedroom just so it was comfortable for sleep. And then the rest of our house didn't even have air conditioning. So
yeah, I mean, leave your doors open during the day. Like
I want to be honest about the way we lived when we were in Hawaii to live on $22,000 a year or whatever that comes out to. But man, it was just so much fun. It was worth it for all the freedom and just awesome experiences we had. It didn't matter that like we only had air conditioning in one bedroom of our house.
Right, like we didn't have a couch, but like why would I, when I'm in Hawaii, spend time on my couch watching TV? Like I'm not there for that. I'm there to explore and go out and experience. And so, you know, it didn't really it didn't align well anyway. And it seemed like kind of a waste. So we're like, we just need a place to sit and eat at a table and like work, you know, on a computer at a table for a few hours a week. So yeah.
Which brings me to the freelance work that you did. So you wanted to break even, you needed a little cash flow. What kind of work were you guys doing?
So when I was leaving my job, I actually talked to my boss and the CEO who like also was in office. And I was like, hey, I'm going to move to Hawaii. And, you know, I like what I'm doing. I recognize that that's kind of you don't have any remote employees, but I'd love to keep doing anything that you would like me to keep doing remotely, because a lot of what I do can be done remotely. And they were really amenable to that. And I told them about it well in advance. I think like 6 months before we left, I was like, hey, PS, just so you know, because it takes a long time to find someone, train, and replace. And I was like, I will help with any part of that process. But also you could just keep me on, right? And so they actually did. We worked out like some tasks that I can do remotely. I told them like, it's a 5-hour time difference, but like I'll be up at 3 a.m. if it means you need me at 8 a.m., Florida time. So we came to an arrangement. I think it worked about 10 hours a week. I had certain things that I had to accomplish for them, but that was, it part of the reason that was kind of successful, or the reason that I was able to even like get over myself to have that conversation, was that we did have a good amount of money saved up at that point, a good amount of like some FU money where like if they said no, I would just be like, okay, that's fine too. And I think we
were probably at about 6 to 7 years of annual expenses saved at that time. So
that felt like even free. If no one takes us up on like freelance work or whatever, like, okay, I burn like half a year of living expenses. Like, okay, like I'd rather cover, we'd rather get it for free or whatever, but like worst case scenario, like I could cover it, Mm-hmm. And so that was, but it ended up working out really great. And I actually continued to do some work for them too. Like even when we came back, I think that they might've been thinking like, she'll come back to Orlando. And I was like, I was never like dishonest or anything. I was like, I'm not coming back to Orlando, but they're like, maybe she'll come back. And I was like, no, we're not.
I was a high school teacher when we left. And so that wasn't a job that I could even negotiate to do remotely.
At that time,
yeah.
Maybe now.
In today's world, a little different. But I had a couple of tutoring clients in college that I was doing on the side already. So I kept them, and then I picked up 1 or 2 more tutoring clients in Hawaii, just like local advertising, like Craigslist and stuff. And
photography.
A little bit of photography. And those things combined added up to around 10 hours or so a week for me as well. So we were both working about 10 hours a week. And remember, at that time, we were only aiming for an annual salary equivalent of like $22K a year because we were just trying to net zero on that vacation time. So 10 hours a week each was, more than enough to do that. So,
or just enough, I guess, by the
or just enough. Yeah, just enough.
Yeah, one thing I think about often, and this goes back to something you said a moment ago, Lauren, is when you were negotiating that leave from your job, I think the whole financial independence thing, if you want to keep your job, it almost makes you a better worker because you don't need the job. At that time, if you're still doing it, it's because you really want to be doing it. And you're doing it from the heart and you're going to be honest. If someone screws with you at your work, you're just going to be like, screw you, I'm out of here. So you're in it for the most purest of reasons at that point. And I think you're probably a better worker.
Yeah, I think, I definitely think that is possible. I feel like sometimes people get, to the point where if you do get like fed up, if you're tired of your job, you might end up in a situation where you do just like walk out, and that's not like a great experience for the employer either. Like, I don't know, every time that I've had colleagues or whatever who are like over it, I'm like, well, like as long as like, don't let them know that you're over it, because then they're not going to want to keep you around. Like if you are going into work every day with a bad attitude because you're just like done working, or you're at the point where like, I don't care, I could leave at any time. I think sometimes depending on the person, it could set them up for like a different experience too, where like maybe they're not as good of an employee anymore, but it could go either way, right? It could make you really great employee because you're doing it because you love it, or you're one bad day away from like making it really hard for the employer to like fill your role, right?
Well, I think what she's saying is if you wanna leave and take 6 months in Hawaii
and let them just keep paying
because you don't like your job. Don't let them know you don't like your job if you want to keep 10 hours a week remote when you go, right? You need to still be a good worker and do that. So, yeah, it could go either way. Like, you could be leaving to this remote or part-time position because you don't really like the work anymore. Or you could be saying, I'm totally financially independent and I don't need this anymore, but I love my job, so that's why I want to keep 10 hours a week. So it can kind of go either way, I guess.
think it could go either way. But, it depends on the attitude, and it depends on, if you really do like the work. I think I liked what I was doing. It was just like a lot. So I was a one person department. So I was happy to ratchet it down.
So would either of you ever go back to a full-time job, or?
I don't think so. Like, I mean, unless something catastrophic.
So I can envision two ways that it would happen for me personally. One is that if we have an economic meltdown that is unlike anything that the United States has ever seen before, then of course all of us fire people are probably going back to some kind of work, right? And again, it would have to be literally something that is unprecedented, has never happened before, because the 4% rule is pretty well tested against really bad stuff, actually. Or two, I could see a world where like I might want to start a business, like something that's just like a passion that who knows what I'm going to be interested in 10 or 20 years from now, so and like we have our blog and we still do that. I don't even count that as work, but like we do it. So does that count as work? I don't know. Like these are the things that are like the semantics that people argue about when it comes to financial independence and early retirement and stuff.
But like going to an office at someone else's request
I don't think,
is a different.
I don't think I want to do that unless I am forced to for money reasons, which I think is unlikely. But we have to all admit that it's possible, right? It's at least possible. So be humble about it.
But yeah, I don't. I mean, I could see examples where like maybe if there was like consulting job that someone reached out for me, to help on a project or something. I could see being like, yes, if I really was interested in that thing or wanted to like help that person out, but not like, let me set my clothes out the night before and wake up at 7 a.m. and go to work. Like, nah.
Yeah. What about you, Carl? Would you ever go back?
No, I would never. I pretty much the same answers as them. Like it was a lot worse. We're a bit older. So my first job, they said, well, we've got core hours. You have to be here between like 8:30 and 4:30. You can take your lunch between this time, and there's a dress code too. Like, fuck all that. There's no way. I mean, that's just the thought of that makes me disturbed right now. That would just be horrible. But I think like we're working out, Doug and I, we're not getting paid anything to do this. We're just doing it because we enjoy it, and whether you call it work is semantics, I guess. Yeah, it would be fun. Like I toss around business ideas with people all the time. Like I was thinking about you two actually, and Longmont has a real need for like a high quality RV place where people could come and park their RVs and stay, or maybe a nano brewery would be fun to do. I don't want to be involved in the day-to-day operations, working behind the counter, but I'd invest in that and maybe be involved at some point. But at that point, it's more about doing a fun project with friends that would bring me happiness. I want it to bring me money too if I'm going to put my bank account on the line for it.
Sure.
But like a 9-to-5 job, something you're tied to just sounds, ugh. How about
It's
you, Doug?
rough. No, and I was going to throw one other thing that you've been talking about a lot, and that is lubricants and stuff. There's that Magic Lube. I don't know if you saw it at his place as well, but yeah, he has this huge giant tube of lube, and it's for his swimming pool, he said.
He said.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a multi-purpose lube. I think it has 653 uses or something like that.
Yeah, and you came up with one extra that wasn't even documented. But to answer your question, no, I don't think I would go back to an office either. If it was a really cool project or something like
Right.
that, I could maybe see it happening. Like, again, Carl and I are working on this and this is fun. But yeah, traditional like corporate kind of thing. And I know like a gap in the resume is not a big deal. I've actually done more interesting things now. But the old jobs that I used to have, I think as soon as they Googled me, they would just say, fuck that guy. There's no way
Get
we're
him out.
hiring yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I would be hireable in a corporate position anymore. Just because I have so much other content that would be very easy for them to say, he's kind of a wild card.
Yeah. Another thing that comes to my mind as we talk about this, I guess, is like if you do the whole like FI lifestyle and you're in your like accumulation phase and you're saving whatever your savings rate is, 50, 70, 80, whatever percent, later on, once you've reached that point, you almost look back sometimes, and we've talked about this a number of times, and you say, well, why did we really save that much in the first place? Because if you do the math on that, like, we could have just been working 5 or 10 hours a week this whole time and not saving all this money, and we basically would already be retired, except for without the giant fat brokerage account behind it, right?
Well, we had those conversations in Hawaii because we were, doing that, working to cover our expenses only. And, we had this brokerage account that was like still growing because we weren't tapping it. And we were like, really? Like,
yeah. And I guess that's kind of the concept of like coast fi that people talk about. So, I mean, it's kind of interesting to think about that, but it's just weird to have this perspective now because like right now, like I still do this like 10 hours a week for this tutoring company. And I make more than double what we need to live still off of 10 basically hours a week. So we still effectively have like a 50% savings rate plus. And it just seems
silly.
I don't know. It just seems kind of ridiculous. Like to think like, why would I ever work 40 hours a week? It's crazy. So I don't know. But I think you gain that perspective as you level up, right? Because when we were first making $38,000 a year and
so
I was a
much.
high school teacher and stuff, like things were a lot harder. So I don't
And
know.
it felt like a lot of money then. Whereas like now I feel like once you have a skill set, you are worth a little bit more and you can ask for more. And so when you do bring your hours down, you can actually like increase your rate of pay the more that, the more valuable of an employee you are. And so like now at this point, having put in the years, we are more valuable employees and we're worth more now. And so we can get away with working less and it seems like crazy.
Yeah. But I guess what I'm saying is like to anyone who is pursuing fire, at least think about, I'm not saying don't reach fire, but I'm saying like at least consider in the back of your mind how free you really are if you have a savings rate that's above 50%. Because like if you hate what you're doing, if you feel like you're grinding it out, you really don't have to, because chances are you're going to keep making more and more per hour as you go throughout your career. And so the number of hours of work you would need to support yourself, even if you didn't have your investments, is like ridiculous. It gets to be ridiculously low if you keep leveling up the salary levels, right? And like, I'm not talking crazy numbers here. I mean, neither one of us ever made 6 figures at any of our jobs. So like, again, it's really just keeping your expenses low gives you this crazy freedom to do whatever you want. So I don't know. There's just so many different paths to it. I think people get shoehorned into like, there's exactly one way to do it. And I don't know, I look back sometimes and think like, well, should we have really saved that hard and saved that much? But we did, and it's good. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's good.
Just something to think about.
I know I've heard people talk in a similar sort of thought processes where, okay, I'm not going to earn anything else ever again, but really you could get a job that you like. I'm into home brewing, so I could maybe work at a home brew shop for a few hours a week and make, I don't know, $20,000 a year, something small, but enough to, well, save on my hobby, one, because you probably get a discount. And then two, you can offset, part of your expenses. So even like our expenses here are not as low as yours, but I mean, still 20,000 on, $60,000 per year expenses. Yeah, the math changes dramatically. And you don't have to do that indefinitely, right? You can see how the market reacts and be flexible and adaptable depending on, what really happens. Because our projections are really cool, but they're just projections, and we have a much clearer forecast once we're, 5 years in or 10 years in.
Yeah. I would say if you do save up to 25x, like the chances are almost 100% that you're going to wind up with way, way too much money one day. And so we can already see that that's the most probable thing that will happen to us over the course of the next decade or two. Because I just don't think we're going to make $0 a year in income, probably ever. But, who knows?
So then we wouldn't be touching the nest egg, and it keeps growing. And
And you've emphasized some frugality stuff and keeping expenses low. What are some things that you don't skimp on? What's most important? Another way to look at it. What are things that are non-negotiable, really high priority for you both?
We keep the air conditioner set at whatever level we want it to be set at. And I like that is important to us. It doesn't cost much, but it costs something.
Costed more. It was more expensive in Hawaii because they have the most expensive, like per watt or something. Like it's crazy expensive in Hawaii. So to run that air conditioner, which by the way, the houses aren't insulated either because no one has air conditioners. So like, it was a lot of money to run the stupid air conditioner, but it was so necessary for like a good night's sleep. And that's really important to us, is like being well rested.
And I think we've certainly given ourselves permission to spend whatever on like really nice camera equipment, because photography has always been a side hustle for us, and it's made a lot more than it costs. So maybe that's cheating in my answer, but
I think that's cheating.
We have a lot of expensive, fancy camera equipment, which is as much an investment in a business as it is for fun. But it is for fun. I mean, it's a hobby for us. So
I occasionally will buy like new makeup and stuff. It's a hobby that I have, but like I don't overspend on it.
Her makeup costs like $1
it
for a
costs
lipstick.
$1.
That's like the cheapest.
This lipstick's like $3.
She doesn't. She's actually perfect and doesn't overspend on anything. I think I'm actually the spendy one in the relationship. So
yeah, you probably are more spendy, honestly. But like I was raised more like frugally than you, so
true.
You were raised to kind of have whatever.
I was
you
a spoiled
want,
kid.
So
I was a really spoiled kid.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a huge difference between the two of us.
Yes. So I have like a different perspective, I think, on like spending. I'm like, I don't really need the $3. I won't buy it.
She does.
Time.
She still will like debate over like $3, and it doesn't.
Well,
even,
it's
like...
especially if I know it can be cheaper. It like is very difficult for me to like buy at full price. If I'm like, this regularly goes on sale. I want it now, but like if I just wait 2 weeks, it'll be on sale again. So I'll just wait. It's fine.
Okay.
That's the kind of person I am. So
she's just wired that way.
Yeah. Those struggles are real. Sometimes we'll go out for a drink and you see the 4 to 6 happy hour where everything's half price. And you look at your watch, it's like $5.58. Like waitress, get over here. Like right now, I want to make sure I get in on this one.
Yes,
that's true.
I don't think those things will ever go away, but I think it's a good thing. I think it's always good, no matter how much you have, to be conscious of what you're using, and it's not just money; it's everything. Make sure it's thoughtful and conscientious.
Yeah, part of FIRE is not just like accumulating as much money for yourself as possible, but also just wasting as little as possible.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you just get in a mindset where you look at certain things that you could be buying, and you just say to yourself, like, man, that just feels like it would be wasting money. Like, it doesn't even matter if I have enough for it or more than enough for it. It just feels like a waste, Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe that's irrational. Maybe it's not. But
yeah, like with clothes, I like having different outfits and stuff. But I try to buy stuff that like I can mix and match, or like, can I wear this with more than one thing, or like how do I get the most value out of it? And like, that helps justify the cost of like this $10 skirt. So
And I think Carl does that a lot with his white t-shirts. He could wear those with nearly anything.
Yeah, if you saw me any other day, I would have a white T-shirt on there. Like a 3-pack is $12 at Costco. The problem is if you spill anything on them, it's that like fancy fabric that's really good at wicks. I'm a big fan of air conditioning too. I will not compromise in air conditioning. So these shirts are really cool, but if you spill like one thing on them, the shirt's like, I still wear them, but Mindy will be like, oh my God, you ruined another shirt. I'm like, that's okay. There's 12 of them up there. And if you wait till end of season, they go on clearance too. They got the little star on them at Costco.
are those like the cool shirts?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
the
you
wicking
have some
fabric.
cool
I
shirts.
have some of those from Costco. They're nice.
Yeah, they
he
are.
has black ones though.
I
but-
use them for bike riding. They're great for that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's weird to have a black one for biking, but
Yeah, go for it.
Listen.
I've got the black ones too, but those are winter. I swap them out. Like,
Yeah.
in another month, I'll swap them out. So if someone dropped 10 million bucks on you, we might have it sitting here on the table. If
Yeah,
someone,
what's the deal with these stacks of cash we have here?
Doug's side hustle is actually involves, we probably can't say it because it's illegal, but you're, in the other room, there's a big operation here, and I can't really go into it, but yeah, that's where this comes from. But if Doug say Doug was really successful with his operation and he gave you 10 million bucks, would your life change at all? What would you do different?
we would buy a house across the country in
That's
California.
true. So yeah,
That's like the number one answer.
I would say like location, like where we live, is pretty important to us. And we currently live across the street from the beach in Florida, and we spent more
That
than
was
we
an
needed
impulse
to
buy.
on a house. You know,
That was a COVID impulse buy.
so for context, our first condo was $71,000 that we paid for in
3
cash.
bedroom, 2 bath, 1,200-ish square feet.
Yeah,
Gainesville, Florida.
we bought that right after we came back from Hawaii. And then we stayed there for 5 or something years like that. And then now we just a year ago bought this beach condo, and it was $204,000, which is, nearly triple the original cost of our previous house. So for us, that feels like a ridiculous
Very
amount of
bougie.
money to spend on a house. But
It's 2 bedroom, 1,200-ish square feet. So it's like comparable in size.
but it's across the street from the beach. So.
Yeah, that was
So-
the big selling point.
Yeah, I think if someone dropped millions of dollars on us, we'd probably get similarly a small beach house. We don't need anything big, but California, like Southern California coast, that's like our dream location, I think. We
Yeah.
got to live there for 9 months while I was in grad school, and we just fell in love with it. But it's ridiculously expensive to live there. I mean,
Not even just for the house, like the land is just so expensive. Like Steven was saying, like something small would be fine. It's just even that costs a ton of money. Coastal California. So
But other than that, I don't think a lot would change.
no. I mean, if you're happy like in your lifestyle, I feel like money doesn't really change that. I guess we'd probably give more of it away. I don't know. Like I don't know. I would
Yeah.
fly our family out to California to visit us more.
Right.
Have a flight fund or something.
By the way, the stacks of cash and the side hustle. I have an interesting side hustle to tell you about that involves banded stacks of cash, if you would like to know.
Let's do it. Yeah.
So this was probably
This
probably
was in
6 or
Orlando, right?
yeah, it was probably 6 or 7 years ago when we lived in Orlando.
Orlando was our time of side hustles. We did like crazy stuff.
We did a
and
lot of weird stuff. So here's one. All right, and I have many more, but I at one point became obsessed with $2 bills just as like a novelty. I love to like give tips in $2 bills and whatever, and just like it
Try
was
to spend them
fun.
and people be like, this isn't currency. And he's like, yes, it is.
Yeah. I had a lot of crazy experiences like trying to pay at Taco Bell, and they're like, what are you doing? This isn't real money. And I'm like, get your older manager because they know it is real money. But anyway, so I was obsessed with $2 bills. So that led me to withdraw like, I don't know, several $1,000s in $2 bills at one time from the bank. Like you had to special order them or whatever. And when they arrived, they were all just like these hundreds on this table. They were crisp, perfect, sequential serial number 2s. And I was like,
Banded.
wait, they still make 2s like brand new, or are these really old or what? So being the weird person that I am, I just felt like these are probably valuable somehow. These
More
are-
valuable
these
than,
are
the, than
special
what they're
2s.
called, the face value.
So I looked on eBay, and a banded, I think the amount that I was selling in, I don't remember what the bands are, but the amount I was selling in was $2,000 increments. And you could sell a stack of $2,000 in 2s, 1,000 bills, for like $2,200 on eBay if they were crisp and sequentially serial numbered. And so I started going to the bank and just requesting as many twos as I could get my hands on and just eBaying them and literally shipping out boxes of cash, $2,000 cash to people. And I was making, $200 minus fees a pop. And then eventually I started going to the bank and they started giving me dirty old twos, and the new ones, they ran out of them or whatever. And then that side hustle was over. But
Same with the coin roll hunting.
Yeah, I have a bunch of super weird side hustles if you ever want to do a podcast about weird side hustles.
Those are interesting. Yeah. How did you even find that? I guess like you just got the
He's an
bills
avid eBay user.
Initially because you just wanted $2 bills.
I got them because I just wanted them. I thought they were cool.
Okay.
And then because they were like that and they were twos, like I expected them to be old and dirty and like nobody makes twos anymore. And I just thought these ought to be worth something. And it turned out they were. I just looked them up. Like that's how it came about.
We look stuff up sometimes like that, like things that are hard to find. Like Taco Bell has chips, like tortilla chips in the store that are mild and hot and fire flavored, but they're very hard to find. And we thought we tried them one time, they were really good. And we came across them again, like on a road trip, and we're like, I wonder if these are worth anything because they're not available anywhere. And we looked them up and they weren't actually worth buying, like for that reason. They were fine to buy to eat, but like not to ship them.
I'll mention a side hustle I've never done related to Taco Bell because it's of questionable morality. But there are areas, pockets of the country where there are no Taco Bells. And there are Taco Bell lovers in those locations who want the sauce. So if you go into your local Taco Bell, I don't recommend this. Okay, I've never done it. But if you go into your local Taco Bell and just fill bags with the sauce,
you can sell it.
There is a market on eBay for the sauce to places that don't have Taco Bells where they can get the sauce for free. So there are people out there who just go into Taco Bells and rob them of their sauce and then just distribute it to other locations in the United States. I have not done that one.
And apart from eating into the profits, the sauce that's sold in stores is not the same as the sauce in the packets. Like it's
really not. I don't know what's
really
up with that. You can buy the bottles at the grocery store. It doesn't taste the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like, yes, that would eat into your profits, but also
you can use it for yourself.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's yeah, that's interesting.
Like I said, weird side hustles.
Yeah.
I know all about them.
Yeah.
We have weirder ones than those.
Yeah.
That we have done.
So I had a good transition and then I totally
Carl was
totally
so
forgot it.
concerned.
I know, this is just amazing. There's so many ways to make money.
There are.
Well, that's
on the
like
internet
part
if
of
you're-
the, like, are we ever really going to be retired? Because we're going to walk in somewhere, see something bizarre, look it up on eBay. It's going to be worth money. We're going to clear them out, sell it. And I don't know. It's easy.
I'm just wired that way. I think about ways to make money and I have fun doing it. Like that $2 bill experience was like exhilarating for me. It wouldn't have been if I did it 40 hours a week for the rest of my life. That would be like the worst job on the planet. But doing like 2 or 3 times and making some money and being like, I can't believe that worked. It's so fun. And I have so many side hustles like that.
Okay. So lifestyle design and happiness has kind of been an underlying subtext of many of your answers. What does a perfect day or maybe week look like for you guys?
So we kind of found that an inverted work week where you spend 5 days doing really fun stuff and like 2 days crossing things off your to-do list, whether that's like actively putting in hours at your job or like freelancing or whatever it is, really fits our lifestyle a lot better. When we were on our road trip to all the national parks 2 years ago, we found that we would be like out either on the road or like in the parks doing something fun, exploring a new place for like 5 days. And then like around, it'd be like time to kind of get some stuff done again. And so we would stop and like spend a day in a coffee shop, crossing things off the list, getting stuff done. And that felt really good. It feels good to be productive, just like I don't need to be that productive. I don't need to be 40 plus hours a week productive anymore. And so that inverted work week where, 5 days of fun, 2 days of like getting business done, getting stuff done was like really a good fit for our personalities, I feel like.
Yeah, it felt like on that trip, we were both doing like some freelance work while we were on that national parks trip, and also kind of doing the same thing as Hawaii where that freelance work paid for, actually in that case, it paid for even more than the entire trip. But yeah, it was like it's not even that it has to be like these 5 days you go to the parks and these 2 days you go sit at a coffee shop. It's just like an approximate 2 to 5 ratio, like the reverse of a regular work week.
And sometimes it wasn't even sequential. Like we wouldn't spend like a weekend, 2 days specifically. It was just as it happened.
But at that ratio, work actually starts to feel like a welcome break from the other stuff you're doing. Like going to national parks 7 days a week for 7 months straight actually doesn't sound fun. But doing that 5 days a week for 7 months was extremely fun. So you can actually make yourself like work more by doing that, like
doing less of it.
Reverse schedule. Yeah, but doing less of it.
Stop it altogether.
Yeah.
You'll love it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And for, I guess, the ratio that you mentioned, roughly 5 to 2, so flip it, great. What activities do you guys really enjoy doing, like in parks or elsewhere? Like, let's say, you guys are about to head home for a bit. So what things do you like to do there?
So the secret to making me happy is exercise.
If he's in a bad mood, I'm just like, we're going on a walk. And I know that sounds like I'm taking, like I have a dog here, but it's serious. So like,
you're like, dangle the keys.
Yeah, we're
you're
gonna go outside. Like,
do you need to go to the gym?
Yeah, like,
but
it's definitely the way. If he's in like a sour mood, like the instant flip is to just like take him on a walk, take him to the gym, whatever.
It works every time, and yet I will never believe that it's gonna work. I'm not like, yes, let's go exercise.
He's like, fine,
because I'm in a bad mood. I'm like, I guess I'll go do it. And then when I
can like
get
guilt
home,
him into it, like, come on, don't be shitty, like, come on, let's do this, like, and then he's like, you're right.
It just makes me super happy. So having some amount of exercise every single day is like a requirement for me to be happy. I think really for both of us to some extent.
Yeah, I mean, any like movement feels good, right? I also like enjoy specifically going to the gym because I like doing some like weightlifting, which I feel like is a little bit harder, just like, hey, we're in nature, like, let me pick up this boulder. Like, it's not really the same thing, right? But we like hiking. At home, we have some kayaks. We just recently, this weekend, did some more stand-up paddleboarding, which was really cool. We also like riding our bikes, as we've alluded to a few times, going on like biking trips and exploring trails and stuff. So, just stuff that you can do actively. We've ridden bikes in the parks. We did that in Glacier.
The other thing that I'd say is like really satisfying, that at least for me, and I think to some extent both of us too, that I have to force myself to do, like almost against my own will. I know this sounds terrible, but is hanging out with other people, doing things like this right here. Mm-hmm. I will feel great after this, because like I got like human connection and made friends and talked about stuff, and it's awesome. But like for some reason I have this block against starting that activity.
A little antisocial, maybe.
And so that's another thing that I have to deliberately work into my schedule, is like hanging out with people and being social. And it's worth it every time.
And it's great now being more free in our schedules. Like, we have the time for that. And like, we made time for that too on our road trip. We've got friends in all these different cities. And so like driving through, we're like, it's only like an hour detour if we go into Chicago and see our friend, like, and like, that's not like on a 7-month road trip. That scope is not very large. So we stopped in and saw a lot of friends on that road trip. And like, even now, like stopping in and seeing folks. Another thing that is fun for us is, being creative in some way. So like we mentioned, we do photography, and like our side hustle of photography was more people oriented. So like doing weddings and doing portraits and things like that. But in the parks, we really tried to focus and work on doing more like landscape and like fine art style photography, which is like a different muscle to flex. And so that was really fun. That was one of our goals during that trip. And we've kind of tried to stick with it. I mean, we've always, you take pictures because you've got a camera on you. If you've got the like creative bug, it's just kind of in you. But like to do it deliberately, like sometimes, like we went to Devil's Tower on this road trip. We were leaving. It was dark almost. The sky was like dark red because the sun was setting, and we took the wrong turn out of it. So we had driven, and I was waiting for like a pull out or something to turn around. And when we turned around, I was like, oh my gosh, like, do you see this alien tower just like ominously in the distance on a red sky? And it's so dark and like moody. And, we didn't want to stop. We were trying to like go eat or something, but like we stopped, got the tripod, set it up, like making time for those kinds of things, even when you don't feel like it, does feel good later. Like you're glad that you forced yourself to do the thing that like will bring you joy.
It's easy to brush off all those things: exercise, friends, creativity, stuff like that. But if you force yourself to do them, you won't regret it. And also, all three of those things are free. They don't cost any money. So like, if you get your entertainment that way, it will actually displace the other forms of entertainment that people turn to that cost a lot of money. So that can be like a secret hack to get to FIRE in the first place too, is to focus on those things.
Nice.
Yeah, I think a lot of people they think they know what makes them happy, but they actually don't. I don't know, we had some friends who were like, oh, all I want to do on my vacation is sit on the beach and have someone bring me drinks. I'm like, oh, that's kind of strange. Like, it costs a lot of money. You're probably paying $12 a drink. You could just buy a 6-pack of beer for that same amount. And
Right.
you've got it right next to you. Like, why do you need someone to do that? And I don't know. Happiness is a hard nut to crack. And it seems like you two have certainly cracked it and understand it. The social thing for me too, I realized that during COVID, I'm like, just sitting around in the basement all day. And eventually you get to a point where you're like that guy in The Shining and here's Johnny, like going crazy. And you, like looking back, you don't realize when it's happening, but you feel like you're like looking back. I realized my mental state was going down. So now I force myself every day to go to the co-working space, which you're familiar with, and just interact with people, even for like 15 minutes. Cause I notice it makes a difference in the way I feel. And exercise too, extremely important. And like you said, mostly free or can be free.
Mm-hmm. And one thing we haven't touched on, which I guess we can sort of get into, is you do travel in your van. So is it hard to exercise? How do you manage to do that?
So our van is a very simple setup. We mentioned it earlier. It's a Nissan NV200. It's got basically just a full-size bed in the back and some storage underneath that. So it's not like decked out like these really expensive camper vans that have like full kitchens and stuff like that. It's just a bed. So our perspective with that is kind of, that's our place to sleep. Like that's bed, and then the rest of the world is kind of where we live. And so what we do for the gym also doubles as our shower spot, which is going to Planet Fitnesses. I looked it up. I was like, comparing like the YMCA, Anytime Fitness, Planet Fitness. Planet Fitness has one of the largest footprints of all the gyms, and the pricing structure is like pretty good.
That's really cheap.
It's like $25 a month. You can go to any gym in the country and bring a guest for free.
So you only need one membership per 2 people.
So it's really, really affordable in that way. And so, kind of to the point earlier, like we show up for like showers and we're like, oh, we should also just work out because we're already here, like
it makes you feel guilty.
It definitely makes you feel guilty when you walk in. You're like, I'm just here for a shower, But we have done that occasionally, but we try to also get a workout in. But that's kind of our method of travel. Is like if we have a work day that we need to do, we just go sit in a coffee shop somewhere. Those are in every town. Planet Fitnesses are like almost in every town. And kind of like what I was saying earlier on that trip, especially, we realized like an hour detour to go to this city instead of that city, because this one has a Planet Fitness, isn't really that big of a detour when it's kind of in the same direction,
Mm-hmm.
Is going to the bathroom ever a problem?
No.
Our style of travel is, and I wouldn't even, I'm not even bragging about this. I actually think sometimes it's a negative. But our style of travel, for whatever reason, is to go really, really fast. Like we'll spend like a day here and then go to the next place and then spend a day there and then go to the next place.
Maybe two.
We rarely linger. So what that means, because we're constantly moving, is that we are always passing through towns and cities and stuff. So we have access to facilities basically every single day. But if you're the type of person who wants to like go somewhere and camp out there for a week at a time, then you have to figure out
really
ways
plan around it.
to handle those situations.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really happen to us because we move so often.
I will say pre-COVID, it was a lot easier because like Walmart used to regularly be open 24 hours and like now most of them are not. So you do have to do some planning with regard to like brushing your teeth. Like you have to find a place that's still open. But like one of our favorite like places to stop is like truck stops, like Pilot. I was like, starts with P. Flying J, the Travel America, the TA Centers, Petro, like those places Loves. They all are open 24 hours. You can go in, pee, brush your teeth. Truckers are also stopping there to do the same thing. So it's pretty well accepted when you're also there doing
Like
that.
truckers are pretty much using that as like their living room. And so
Yeah.
if you're like a van lifer, you can use that as your living room too. And like nobody even bats an eye or thinks it's weird. You just step
Yeah.
in, get some gas.
It's not weird to linger there. Like they don't expect you to like get in and get out, although most people are because they're traveling.
Yeah.
But if you're a trucker, you're there, you're showering, you're hanging out the rest of that night before you start your next day. So it's pretty a pretty good place to stop, and they're pretty common.
Yeah.
Unless you're somewhere like super remote and then you're just like on the side of a road.
And the other thing, so we took a little intermission, and one thing we forgot to mention for people that are only listening to the podcast, I have stage money that a company sent me. So that is why it's laying around. I don't actually have like
This is fake.
$15,000 of money laying around.
It
Did you think it was real?
looked good from afar, but yeah, it's clearly fake now that I pick it up.
Yeah.
I was avoiding touching it, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it's clearly fake when you pick it up. But it looks pretty good from far away.
It looks
does.
very real.
Yeah.
So you thought I had like
Yeah.
$20,000.
Well, I was like, I don't know what he's doing. Maybe he's just, you know.
I thought there was going to
funny.
be some kind of a gag with it at some point during the podcast. That's why I was like almost avoiding mentioning it, because I thought for sure you had something planned.
Yeah.
No,
It was
just,
here for a reason, and we were, yeah.
Or that we were going to win some prize money or something.
Yeah.
I mean, come
we're
on.
like
there's
set
no,
up for a game show
there's
right
no
here.
giveaways on your podcast with it? Fake money?
so a company sent it to me, and I had it laying around, and I was like, oh, well, we could put it on the table for people to fidget with or whatever.
It reminds
Just
me
fan
of,
myself with it, that's all.
It reminds me of season 1 of Shark Tank. They
Yeah.
had stacks of cash on the
table,
yeah,
like
on
where the
each
sharks
shark's,
sit. Yeah.
like seat had stacks of cash only in season 1. And then they were like, I guess this is dumb.
Yeah, it was. So it was,
No
and,
offense.
and the theme song was also kind of like hilarious then.
Yeah, it was that show. We've seen
Do you remember
like
the
pretty much every
implant
episode
that
of
the
that.
guy had?
Yeah,
Like
that was-
season 1, someone wanted to like implant Bluetooth like in your skull, like, and they were like, "Why are you? Get out of here! You're crazy."
That show was pretty wild during season 1.
Yeah.
So, were there any, let's see, I actually wrote this question down. What's the biggest misconception that people have about you after hearing that you retired at 29?
So I mean, it's the normal misconceptions, right? It's like the same misconceptions that everybody has about like fire in general, which is like you use the word retire because obviously it's a fun word and it's kind of how you feel after you reach financial independence. You feel like, wow, I get to do whatever I want for the most part now. But
Retire's like the best word for that.
People
we don't
have-
have a better one for some reason.
yeah, but people have their problems with the word retire because retired is like reserved for people who are like 65 plus.
Sitting in a rocking chair.
And like supposedly like retire means quit work, right? Like that's an approximate like translation. So if you do any amount of work, then are you really retired? Yes or no? Like truthfully, the answer to those types of questions, like all these like misconception things, are like those things don't matter at all. Like when people on social media say like you're not retired, we're like, that's cool, like you don't have to call us retired, we're gonna keep saying it though, have a great day. Because like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter like these semantics, like most of these criticisms are semantic. It just matters whether you think that this idea is something that's interesting and could improve your life. And if you do, then do it. And if you don't, then move on and don't do it. But like people just get so caught up in the semantics. So I would say that's like been our biggest struggle, but I think that's not unique to us. I think that's just everyone in the fire community has that.
I would say like it's also still relatively new for us to be like calling ourselves retired like,
Yeah.
within the last, year or so. And so, and this year's also been kind of weird. We've only seen mostly people we already knew, except for coming here to Longmont. We've met a lot of new people, but you all are also retired. So like, there's no like misconception, miscommunication there. But I will say this is not really a misconception as much as like a change of heart. I feel like all of our friends and family now finally seeing us like not going to work every day are like, oh, that wasn't bullshit. And like now they want to know more. And like now they're more receptive and open, I would say, to like.
Yeah, there's been some of that, and it's been really good because I think like since we were from age 22 to 29 or whatever, we, especially me, were trying to like convert people that we know and just tell them like, hey,
try
like
not
if
to
you
talk about
just
it.
knew about this, you would definitely do it because it's better, right? And then like that doesn't work really well and people don't like it when you tell them what to do. And so I had to learn that the hard way, like a lot of times over. But I will say that, like, okay, part of the solution to that is starting a blog, because you put out the information and then the people who want it find it, and that's cool. And then the other thing is, like, when you're on the way up, right, nobody really believes what's happening. And then when you do take 6 months in Hawaii or 7 months in the national parks, or you quit your full-time job and have no plans to get another one, things like that, people start to believe that, like, the stuff you did had a positive impact on your life. And so then, like, I've had people reach out for help with, like, their finances and with stuff like that. And I am really happy to give it, because, like, I've been waiting all these years to give it to somebody. So that's not everybody. And there's people who probably think that the life we live is stupid and they would never want to live it, like living on $22,000 a year, $28,000 a year, whatever. But for the people who do think it's interesting, I think that they're starting to get the proof that it actually works, and they're reaching out about it, and that's just cool to see. So I've had to learn the lesson of doing it the more passive way, and I think it's a good lesson to learn. You should let people live their lives the way they want to live them, and learn things from you if they want to learn them from you.
But I feel like that's what's happening. Like, we've had friends who, you know, in this era of you know, this work landscape that we're in, it's really made a lot of people question, like, what does it mean to, like, be working, and, like, if I can do my job at home, and now I realize that I don't put in a full day of work because I'm not in the building anymore, but I still get all my stuff done, like, why am I working full time, right? And so I feel like there's that question is being asked more and more now.
Because of COVID, actually.
Yeah,
Some
right.
of that
People working
is
from
because
home
of
more.
that.
And also just, like, our friends, you know, getting, you know, tired of having been working for a decade, you know, that I think I've seen our friends making positive changes in their lives to work less, or to switch into a freelance role where they can have more control over their schedule, more control over the people that they have to interact with on a daily basis. And, like, that's exciting, because, like, I've been waiting, like Steven's, like, he's been waiting for people to ask them questions. I've been waiting to see, like, is anyone else going to be retired when we are? Because, like, I'll come to you, but, like, do you have the time for me? Because, like, I need you to be free also, or else, like, who am I going to hang out with? So that's been really exciting to me to see our friends making these changes where I can, like, you know, hang out with them more, because, like, I love Steven and I love hanging out with him, but, like, it's also good to have other friends.
It is such an important part of FIRE, though, is to make sure that you bring, or at least try to bring, some friends with you, because otherwise you're not going to have any friends that are free Monday through Friday from 9 to 5.
Everyone can come on the weekends, but we're like, that's the worst time to go to the beach.
It is like the beach outside our house. I mean, like, we have an article about this on our site. Is that
so
like
stark.
everything travel wise, including, like, the beach where we
Parks.
live, the national parks, the local parks, everything, Disney World, whatever, it's packed on the weekends and after 5 p.m. and it's empty the rest of the time. Like, we go out for our beach walks in the middle of the day on a Tuesday, and we're, like, the only people on the entire beach, and we wish that we could show other people, like, this is where we live, not the place we see on the weekend. It's packed.
Yeah. And even then, people are like, this is the least crowded beach I've ever been to. And I was like, oh, it's awful. It's awful right now. There's so many, like, people here. And they're like, this is not any people. And I'm like, it's fine. Just stay until Monday, please.
There's lots of early retirees in Longmont, but maybe I do like the beach a lot too. Like what you said about California resonated with me. Maybe we need a California and or Florida chapter, like all the cool places in the world. We need another, like, mini Longmont set up in these places.
Yeah, we should convert our condo. There's 19 units, so we'll just start kicking people out. Y'all can start buying them up, and then we'll have a little commune.
Done.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe at least one unit. Then we can go visit in the wintertime when it's a little colder here.
Oh, I would totally do that. I'd love to
Yeah.
have a place by the beach somewhere.
Yeah, not bad.
If you host a California event, we'll come.
Yeah. And by the way, our guest room sleeps 6, so, you know.
Oh, nice.
Road
Does it have
trip.
its own bathroom?
There
Yes.
we do. It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. So
Wow.
Yeah.
Pure luxury.
We could figure it out. Yeah.
it is pure. It does feel very luxurious. I also have a fridge that has an ice maker in it. Total luxury. Very crazy.
And air conditioning, I assume.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Do have air conditioning.
You had me at air conditioning.
Yes. Hilariously, it also has a fireplace for, like, Florida.
For, like, the 1 month a year
Yeah.
that you can
Oh, wow.
use it.
The one day a year that's
Yeah.
necessary.
So we talked a ton about FI topics, but I'm going to let you guys mention any other things that maybe we didn't ask you about with the FI stuff before we transition into some other areas. So is there anything else you want to say about FI or personal finance or anything?
No, I would just give the encouragement that if you have a lower salary in the scheme of FIRE, with all the blogs that you read and YouTubers that you watch and whatever, if you're not making six figures, that's okay. You know, like early on when we were making $38K a year, and I was a teacher, like we were still saving more than 50%, and it is possible to do that. And you can still FIRE in, you know, like our plan back then was like, it might take 15 to 18 years, something like that, which is still, if you're starting at 22, way, way before traditional retirement age. So I would just, like, our goal is really to like reach young people and give encouragement that you don't have to make six figures or even anywhere near six figures to do this stuff. So hopefully people hear that.
Perfect. And just to add a little more context, what was the top combined salary, if you happen to remember, like the rough 10,000 range or so?
So it is, neither one of us ever made six figures. I am technically not allowed to say how much I made at the company that I last worked for because I technically still do freelance work for them, and that's like part of our NDA or whatever. Mm-hmm. I guess, Lauren, you can probably say whatever you want.
Oh, I don't even, I mean, I know like salary wise, I was around 60,000 a year, but we got bonuses. So
yeah,
I feel like I was closer to 80 toward the end, 80 something.
I think your
82.
top was about 80 total.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Okay.
And neither one of us ever made six figures.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So moving on to some of the travel stuff, and I interviewed you for my own podcast previously. So if people want to hear a little bit more of that, they could check out the Doug Show. And we talked for like over 2 hours. I think it was great.
Yeah, that was a good one.
We didn't talk about the national parks trip. And I've listened to many of your other interviews, so I have a pretty good idea of what you did and that sort of thing. But can you lay out sort of a high-level overview for the people that haven't heard about your story and what you did?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, you know, we didn't really talk about the feelings that we had leading up. We mentioned like with Hawaii, that was, you know, our honeymoon, but we were also like very tired of working full-time. You know, being students, we were like right out, you know, we had worked 2 years full time and we're like, this is so much and we really need a break. And so we had these feelings of being like kind of burned out for ahead of that trip. And then, you know, we had mentioned we came back, job hopped into even higher paying jobs, but that also came with more responsibility. And so the burnout also came a few years later from that. And so that was kind of what led us to be like, what's next? You know, we did Hawaii. We need to do something because like this is just, we need to do something else. We need a break. We need to enjoy life again. Like I'm spending way too much time thinking about work, and you know, working for smaller companies, you're like never not on the clock, even when you're out of the office. And so we were just like pretty done. I feel like mentally, you know, even if we liked, I was getting kind of burned out on all factors, but like Steven still liked what he was doing. It was just like 40 hours a week plus is a lot. So that was kind of like what led us to say like, okay, we need to do something else fun again, another like 6 month plus kind of thing. And we've been to some national parks before, like after graduation and just kind of moseying about traveling here and there for like a couple weeks at a time or whatever. And we were like, how many are there? And what does a map to all of them look like? And could we do that? Is that reasonable? Should we just go to all the parks? And how do we make that affordable? And so that's kind of what led us to getting, looking into like camper vans and stuff. It's because like the nightly cost of lodging adds up over 7 months significantly. And so that would be the biggest cost. Cause like, regardless if you're doing a road trip, you have gas. So having a fuel efficient vehicle, but also a way to make lodging affordable. That was kind of our thought process. That's what led us to the van. And then, yeah, we're like, it seems doable. 7 months. At the time, there were 59 national parks when we were planning. While we were on the road, they added 2 more. And then this year, 2020, they added a third one, a 63rd one. But we've been to that one now too. So
awesome.
Yeah, that's kind of what led us there. Did I leave anything out?
Yeah, I mean, I just the things that people are like usually curious about. There's some of them that are not drivable. You
Oh,
can't drive to them.
We did drive to Alaska, but of the 8 in Alaska, only 3 of them are on the road system. So that required some flights.
Yeah, so there's 5 in Alaska you can't get to by road. There's 2 in Hawaii, which obviously we could not drive our van to. There's 1 in American Samoa, which is another 3,000 miles further than Hawaii.
Closer to like Australia.
And then there's just 1 in the U.S. Virgin Islands. So none of those we could drive to. So out of our 7 months, we spent about 6 months living and driving in the van. And then about 1 month total on like all these islands and different remote locations and getting like hotel rooms or whatever we could do to stay there.
Flights for those places as well.
Yeah. And in terms of like our sort of like money journey or whatever, as it relates to the national park, like we thought that trip, that 7 months, was going to be another Hawaii, like another mini retirement,
Reinvigorating us.
and then like let's get back to it. Let's kind of oversave, like let's save some more, and then we'll like hit fire, and then we'll maybe even get like a little past fire, and then when we get burned out, then we'll quit, right?
Well, because the pay was so it was good. We liked what we were doing. We
didn't
liked
hate our
Gainesville
jobs, and we were making good money, and so we were like, yeah, like we'll be reinvigorated again, just like Hawaii. And so I went back to my full-time job, the same job, and I only lasted less than 6 months before I was like, nah, like we have enough, and I'm not doing this. So that's when I sort of negotiated the whole like part-time deal that I have now, and just kind of stuck with that. And it seems like so little that it's totally worth it.
I had quit my job before we left. I had talked to them about like negotiating some remote work, but like we just couldn't really like meet at a pay range and an amount of work that we were both happy with. So I was just like, it's cool. I'll see you later.
All right.
So that ended up being like our accidental retirement. Like we didn't really intend for it to become our retirement, but like 6 months after that, and
we were like, why are we working?
We kind of called ourselves retired at that point. Lauren, I guess, really at the beginning of the trip, she was pretty much done. But yeah, I thought I was going to keep going, and I could not last.
Yeah.
All right. And then you still do like 1 hour with...
Yeah, I have a client that I do like social media work for. It's like someone that we know, and it's like not a lot of work, but that's something that I did start doing while on the trip.
Yeah.
And I had a few other people that I like did some consulting work for, and like I kind of just let those kind of fade off because I was like, I really don't need all this extra stuff on my plate. So
got it. Okay. And then yeah, that's amazing. That's cool. That's cool. Just quitting. You're like, all right, going on the trip, and you got back and okay.
Quit some more.
Quit some more. What was your favorite national park and or least favorite national park?
So we kept a list the entire time that we were on the road, and every time we hit a park, we then inserted it into that list. Like, is it better than this one, worse than this one, whatever? So by the end, we had a complete ranked list of every national park. And the top ones were really difficult to choose from because
they're all a little bit different, and
there are wildly different places. Like, how can you compare like Carlsbad Caverns, which is an underground cave, to like
American Samoa?
Yeah, or like an island or whatever. Like, they're just so different. So we claim that the top 7 are tied for first place.
But we did rank them.
But we did rank them anyway, and the one that came out on top is Death Valley in California.
I think a lot of it had to do too with our experience there. Badwater Basin is just such a unique place. It's salt flats. And so when you're out there, we were out there at like 9 p.m. I think it was like in January. So it was like a little cool at night, but a jacket was fine. But it was so still because it's salt. There's no vegetation. So when the wind blows, there's no sound. There's no animals out there because there's no vegetation out there. We were like the only people. There's, I think, another photographer because you could see like a light a little bit further away from us. But we were the only ones out there for like a few hours as we like stargazed and took pictures and stuff. And so it was just like a really unique experience. But Death Valley has a lot of little different areas. Like they have sand dunes, they've got the salt flats, they've got, crazy painted rocks that are all different colors, like naturally, not like painted. But, but yeah, it was just a really cool, lots of things to see, something for everyone kind of place.
Was there anything unexpected as far as like benefits from living and traveling in your van? Obviously you saved money on hotels, but anything else where it was surprising?
It was really hard for me originally to like pack, especially for like a 7-month journey going through different climates. I didn't know like what to pack, because I'm like, I'm gonna need like a bathing suit in Hawaii, but then like I need this jacket for when it's winter in mountains and stuff. And so I was very like torn about what to pack, how much to pack, that sort of stuff. But once we have everything packed up in the van, and, you know, the stuff that we need to live day to day, clothes, etc., food, you know, our camera equipment, our laptops, we found like that we forget about everything that's at home, and it like feels kind of silly that there's all this other stuff still at home. I come home and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot, like I have this stuff too. Like, why do I even have it? But that was, I would say, like the biggest benefit is when it's such a stark lifestyle change. I mean, we're on the road for 6 months, not a week, not a weekend. It's not like that is how I'm living, right? That's my lifestyle, is on the road. So you get very used to it, and you like, you know, learn that you can sleep, you know, anywhere, including at rest areas where diesel trucks are idling, and you just like tune it out. It's part of the noise, or like the same 5 country songs playing on the PA system. You're like, oh, sweet lullaby.
But yeah, like, I mean, if you can live without something for 7 months, you can live without it forever. And so it kind of, I guess, like
that's the lesson, really, I feel
reinforce like the whole like minimalism concept. Like, oh, well, we left all this stuff back home, but did we really need any of that stuff in the first place? So that was probably like a FI related benefit, I guess, psychologically.
Yeah.
The other just like cool travel thing about like going in a van and not doing it like the traditional travel way or whatever is, you know, sometimes we would sleep at like truck stops or Walmart or whatever, and that's cool. But a lot of times we would also just like pull off the side of the road in like a national forest or some remote location, and we would have no idea where we were because it's the middle of the night and you can't see anything because there's no street lights or anything. You just see stars, which is really cool all by itself. So you stop, there's total silence, there's all these stars. That's an amazing experience on its own. Then you go to bed, you wake up, and you have no idea what you're about to see out the window. And it's like invariably something really cool when you stop in those types of places.
You're like, holy shit, we're on a cliff.
Yeah, or like you'll be next to a river and you didn't even know you were next to a river.
Yeah,
so.
especially if it's like further down. Like obviously you can hear it sometimes if you're like right next to it, but then you kind of know. But yeah, that was always really cool to like wake up and be like, I wonder what it looks like in the morning, in daylight.
Yeah.
And sometimes we would take pictures, like long exposures at night, just to see like, where are we?
Yeah, that is a hack to like, if you have no idea where you are, stick your camera on a tripod, just rack the aperture open and just set it for 30 seconds at like a high ISO, and you will now have like a daytime image of where you are if you really want to know the answer.
Yeah, if you can't wait till morning.
But most of the time we would just wake up to a total mystery.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I think I want to do this after my kids are done. Doing it with them would be a disaster.
You should totally
There are people
do it.
who do it though with their
Yeah,
kids.
there are.
I see people post about like they've got, 3 kids in this, Class C motorhome, and I'm like, that seems like a lot. Even traveling with like pets, like a lot of people travel with like multiple dogs, and I'm like, they're not a human size, but sometimes they are, and I'm like, that's kind of a lot of stuff, moving parts, different people, different needs to attend to.
I will say, like, my advice, and I think our advice really for like doing van life or doing a mini retirement or sabbatical or taking some time off work or traveling, any of that stuff, do it for long enough that it can be life-changing. Mm-hmm. So if you take 2 weeks off, you're not going to forget your life. The goal is to forget your old life.
Break all your old habits and routines.
The minimum, I would say, for that to happen, because we did this in 2012 right after college graduation. We did a 45-day trip. I would say about that 6-week mark is like just barely enough time to start to forget what life used to be like. And you just learn like all these new things and get all these new perspectives.
You learn a lot about it's enough time to learn about yourself, to like, get away from, I think a lot of people have, their daily routines, like waking up and, just doing the everyday thing, like especially in FI now, like wake up, have coffee, we still do that, but it's a different routine and it's a different, like, some stuff we do kind of keep somewhat similar, like your blanket from home and our pillows from home is what's in the van. But like breaking those,
But your routine, really.
your routine is really what you want to change and for you to get out of your own kind of headspace.
I think we're in week 6 right now
Yeah.
of this current road trip that we're on. So that has happened to us again, like, and just barely, you know, like we're just getting there. But
Will it be like, do you remember the house?
yeah, we were just like reminiscing the other day about like, I forgot about home. Like, yeah. So I don't know. It's just a unique experience, and everybody should do it. Like, it doesn't have to be expensive. That's the thing, is everybody, like, I can sit here and say, you got to do it. You should take 6 weeks and do whatever. And people are going to watch this and they're going to say, yeah, you know, go fuck yourself, because like, oh, you have the money to do that. That's so nice. It doesn't have to be expensive though. Like, we're sleeping in the back of a cheap van at truck stops and stuff. Like, I'm not talking about a lavish, crazy vacation. Just get yourself some kind of remote work, or just save up enough money that you can pay for 6 weeks worth of that or whatever. I would like to maybe publish what our expenses were for this current trip that we're on, just to kind of inspire people of like, it doesn't have to be expensive, and you don't have to be a rich person to go have this experience at all.
Because like the national park trip, given that there were, 12 or so parks we had to like fly into, some of which we had to like charter the plane privately with just us and the pilot, got very pricey. But if you look at just the like lower 48 states worth of parks to travel to, it was like not that bad, and it could have been done definitely a lot cheaper.
Could have been done a lot cheaper by going a little slower and spending more time in each place, therefore less on gas and stuff like that.
And also the eating, we ate out a lot.
But yeah, travel, and our Hawaii trip is like the pinnacle of cheapness. Like,
yeah,
$22K a year for a sabbatical. I mean, that's $11K for your 6 months sabbatical. Like, that's just not that much money, and we eliminated all of our expenses back home. We weren't renting another apartment back home.
Right.
That's instead of our normal expenses. So
that's another important thing. Like, it's not leaving your life behind and pressing, because you can't really press pause on car payments or, on a mortgage payment or whatever. It was really like replacing
that
those
one
costs.
was. Hawaii was like, our lease ended. We have no expenses at home. We now live in a new location, and these are our only expenses. And
these are our things now.
$12,000 for 6 months in Hawaii. Most people don't live on that at home. So, like, again, it just doesn't have to be expensive to do this stuff.
Well, with the national parks, we actually rented our place out while we were on the road. So we moved everything. Our friends had like an unfinished loft in their house. So we moved all of our crap that we didn't get rid of into their loft and rented it out while we were on the road. And like, I think the rent from that was like...
If you do own a home currently, and you might be thinking to yourself, well, my lease isn't going to be up. I have a house with a 30-year mortgage. What am I supposed to do? Sell it and uproot everything? Rent it out. If you rent it out, well, now you're at least covering your mortgage payment, probably more. And so now you have eliminated most of your expenses back home. You've done basically the same thing that we did in Hawaii. So it's possible even if you do own your home, and that's exactly what we did in the national park trip.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you are about at the 6-week mark for this specific trip, and you are forgetting stuff at home.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you miss that you don't have in the van that you can't easily sort of replicate? Anything at home or in the community or anything like that?
The ocean.
Yeah, we've been mostly like landlocked here because we were planning to go into Canada, and so we stayed kind of central and north-ish, and so that, and I would say like generally on a really long trip we do occasionally miss like home cooked meals, and like
cooking, having a kitchen, definitely miss that.
I really like baking, even though Stephen right now is like on a sugar sabbatical. Like that was really tough on our national park.
Sugar sabbatical, I like that.
It's a sugar mini retirement.
Yes, it is. It's killing me because like I love dessert, and I'm like,
you can eat whatever you want.
I do, but like I'm not gonna like make a whole batch of cookies just for me to eat. Like that's crazy, and I won't finish them. And anyway,
so having a kitchen, that's for real.
And like a real one with like a full fridge. But like I don't know, like carrying that with me in a like van or a motorhome or something, it seems like we always talk about this because his dad's like into the idea of potentially RVing, and I'm like, I just don't know that I want to have like a septic tank that I have to dump myself. Like that seems really, I'd rather just go to Walmart or like a truck stop or like, or the kitchen. Like I have to have, you know, the gray water. I have to eventually take care of that and then refill it. And it seems like a lot more responsibility that I don't think it's like worth, especially on like a, you know, months long trip. Maybe if I was going to live full time, I'd want a real kitchen. But for, you know, 6-7 months, it was totally fine to not. We have a propane burner that will like cook stuff on occasionally, but
Yeah. So like, my advice, if you're thinking about doing van life or RV life or something, which one of you had said before that or Carl said that you definitely want to do it. So I would say, like, just to anyone in general, if you're thinking along the lines of, what am I going to miss back home? Like, to your question, right? And your answer to that is like, everything. I'm going to miss everything. Like, I need to have a kitchen. I need to have a bathroom. I need to have a TV. I need to have all these things. If that's your perspective on it, then don't do it, at least for money reasons, right? Because you hear from like people like us and we say, oh, it's so cheap. It's so cheap to do van life and you can explore and pay nothing. That's not true if that is your perspective on it. So like the math that I like to go through sometimes is, if you have any kind of RV that you're going to hook up, like for electricity and water, and like have just a toilet and like a electric burner and your stove, like just the basic stuff, anything you need to hook up for, the average campsite is going to run you, like a really cheap campsite is going to run you like $30 or $40. Average campsite is going to be like $50, $60 a night with hookups. So when you think about how much you're going to spend on a camper that has those amenities, that's like $50,000 to $100,000, which is like way more than what our van costs. If you think about that and the opportunity cost of the money there that like could have been invested instead or whatever, or the interest you're going to pay on a loan for it or whatever that may be, or the depreciation, all of those things combined, or the extra gas for it to be really big. Now that I think about it, it's a lot of things. The extra insurance. If you think about that, plus $50 to $60 a night for a hookup, you've got yourself enough to pay for a hotel every single night and just drive your car. And you can have a hotel everywhere you go. And so, I mean, that is my serious advice. I mean, I'm not being facetious about it. If that's your perspective on the van life or the RV life, and I have no idea what yours is, but maybe you can answer that question. But if that's your perspective, just take your car and go stay in hotels. There's nothing wrong with that. It's going to cost the same amount of money. Don't do the RV life to save money unless you're going to do it to save money.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm. I've had that exact same thought. I've even done the math, like looked at some of these fancier vans and, they're like 80,000. I can just buy hotel rooms like in nice places and kind of accomplish the same shit. It might not be quite as convenient because you don't have some of the, like even the smaller, fancier vans have a little place to cook and maybe sit and that type of thing. So I run these things through my head, but I think the RV thing might still be worth it just for it's a luxury. I might pay extra just to have the nicer RV, to have a consistent place and not have to stay in hotels, even though I realize it would cost more. It might be a worthwhile trade-off.
Well, if you're not doing it for the purpose of saving money, then just do the thing you prefer, right? Like if you really want to do RV life and that just sounds amazing to you and you want to do it luxurious, that's great. It's just that I think sometimes people get in their head, RVs and vans are cheap. That's the cheap way to travel. It's only cheap if you're willing to make it cheap.
Yeah.
Right. So.
And I think, like, you know, to your point, when you have like your own space, it is nice to not have to like unpack. Like when we do stay in a hotel, like when it gets too hot on a trip, we have to stay in a hotel instead of our van. We have to unpack almost the entire van because we've got camera equipment, we've got our laptops. Like I'm not gonna leave the camera equipment in the car overnight. Like we have to unload like a significant portion of the van contents because that's all we've got with us anyway. And so I could see the value in like not having to unpack at a hotel every night or every couple of nights or whatever. And the fact that you can like drive it in, you know, to different areas that a hotel might not be. So there's some benefit, again, like if you're not caring too much about the cost of having an accessible RV, something that can go to cool places. I could see that. But I do
motivate you to slow down a little more though, if you're going to hook up or get hotels, either one of those, like more expensive plans, which is something that I keep saying is like, maybe a mistake that we're making is that we're going too fast. But we have like the ability to go fast because all our stuff's with us in this van and we don't need hookups and we can go anywhere we want. But I think sometimes that makes us go too fast, and
Do too
maybe we
much.
should slow down. So someone who's in like a proper RV or who's staying in hotels would probably be more motivated to do that.
And specific example, we actually bumped into each other in Bozeman because we were both traveling through the area. It just worked out. So we had coffee. It was nice to see you guys.
Yeah.
We stayed, or my family stayed in Yellowstone at the lake in cabins, which those were like $300 per night. So, it was a lot of money, but it was awesome. And there's no cell phone service. It was very quiet and calm, and everyone just hung out.
Yeah.
Funny thing, no one stays up very late if there's no other things to do. There's no sports. I think it was like college football opening day or something. No one cared because we couldn't get information or anything like that. And it was very slow. I mean, we were there for like 3 nights, and yeah, you just have downtime, and I'm really appreciating downtime and like no activities. It's like, what are we going to do? We're sitting out here and we're drinking beer and we have some camp chairs. That's what we're doing. So yeah, if you can slow down, maybe you'll enjoy it.
Yeah. No, I think it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we need to try it more often.
When we do stop in and see friends, I feel like we do get that opportunity
Yeah.
because we like hang out with them. But when it's just us, a lot of times we like go do a hike and then we like, okay, where's the next Planet Fitness? Let's go shower.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. And I think that covers for travel, camper van stuff. Anything else, Carl?
I have nothing to add.
All right. And rounding out to the real estate area, you paid cash for your couple homes. Can you go into the pros and cons for that?
Sure. So this is like
This is one of your favorite
the
topics. I'm gonna
classic
let you.
debate in the personal finance sphere, right? That everyone gets really mad about. It's like this. I feel like it's actually like one of those things, like a 50-50 split in the FIRE community and the personal finance community wider. Is, do you pay off your mortgage, especially in like today's super low interest rate environment, or do you invest the money in something like stocks instead? And so it's an interesting question. I think a lot of people, their answer to that is that paying off your mortgage is purely an emotional decision, and that it's a peace of mind, like makes you feel good that you're debt free thing. And then not paying off your mortgage and investing instead is mathematically superior because you're more likely to make a higher return than the mortgage interest you'll pay, right? And I think that's not quite correct. So I think that it is absolutely 100% true that if you ran the simulation a bunch of times, you would find that the person who takes the biggest mortgage they can get at a low interest rate and invests the difference into a stock market index fund, that person will come out ahead more often than not. Like way ahead, actually. It's a lot. Because the difference could be like if the stock market returns, say, 10%, and your mortgage interest rate's 4%, like that's a spread of 6%. That's not anything to scoff at. It's a big amount, right? So the other side of that, though, I think that everyone who's on the other side just says, well, I want to be debt free. It feels good to be debt free. I don't think that's the right reason to pay off your house or to pay cash for a house. I think the correct reason is risk mitigation. So we have a whole article and a YouTube video all about this as well, about sort of why we paid cash for our house and how it cost us a lot of money in the long run, right? Because we actually did come out behind the person who hypothetically invested instead. But it's risk mitigation because the way I always like to put this is like, let's say you bought a $100,000 house and you have a mortgage equal to $100,000. So let's say you could get a 0% down mortgage, just to keep the numbers really simple. And then you also have $100,000 in the stock market, right? So what's your net worth in that situation? It's you have a 100K house minus a 100K mortgage, that's 0, plus a 100K stock. Your net worth's 100K, right? Then take the other person who has a 100K net worth as well, same net worth, and only owns the home, paid in cash, no stock investments, right? I'm not suggesting these two things. I'm just trying to keep easy numbers, right? Now imagine the market crashes like it did in 2008, where both stocks and real estate go down, let's say roughly 50%. Where does that leave each of these two people in terms of net worth, overall wealth? The person with the 100K house that's paid in cash now has a net worth of exactly 50K, right? It's very simple. Just chop the value of their house in half. The person with the mortgage has lost 50K off of the house, and they've lost 50K off of the stock, and they have a $100,000 debt. They have a net worth of $0. So the additional return that comes with leverage does not come risk-free. It absolutely exacerbates the volatility of your portfolio a lot. And so as long as you're willing to accept that risk and you really internalize it and you believe that, then you're fine. Then do it. And you'll probably come out ahead of the person who pays cash for their house. If you are more risk averse and you want a more conservative portfolio, pay off your mortgage. Also, just sort of to tack onto that, if you're interested in investing in bonds at all to mitigate risk, I think that in today's interest rate environment, it makes more sense to pay extra on your mortgage than to buy bonds. So I think it's irrational to own investment grade bonds at the same time as having a mortgage in today's environment for that reason. So that's kind of all my thoughts on it. Do you have any comments on that? Because I'm really curious to like hear people's like rebuttal. Like I want you to like almost argue against me.
Steven loves debating.
I do.
Well, first, Lauren, anything else to add?
I mean, for me, I would say it's definitely like, obviously the math, I get the math. I would say that also the emotional side like plays into it, because I feel like my upbringing, I am more risk averse. And so like having no debt and like that kind of stuff does make me personally feel better, even though like I also have Steven explaining like the math, right? So like I get it both, but like I also understand both ways. And I do think like it does feel better. And when you rent out your house and you don't have a mortgage, it also like feels nice, like the numbers are pleasant to look at.
Yeah.
But I don't really have like any additional mathematic comments.
I also think like people misinterpret this argument that I'm making too, that we paid cash for our houses, therefore we are arguing others should pay cash for their houses. That is not the argument at all. It's that you need to look at it as a risk reward trade-off. And if you're not looking at it that way, if you just say getting the big mortgage and not paying it off is mathematically better, you are missing the point. And you're missing a big important thing that may smack you in the face the next time a crash happens.
That's what I feel like. I'm most worried about, like the people who are clearly over leveraged and like promote that on social media. Like those are the people, and the people who follow them are the ones that I'm like, do they know what they're doing? Right? Like it's not that I am mad or think that they shouldn't do those things. It's like, do you know what risks you're actually taking? And like, because I think a lot of people talk about certain investments as like a sure thing, like the stock market, we all say like, oh, index funds, 10% or whatever, like, and it's just accepted. But like, that's not, that's accepted in the scheme of it could go down, it could go up, it could go, like it's not a uniform amount. It comes lumpy, and that's, you got to be prepared for that. And I think when it's like, I think people get excited that there's a physical asset that they can like look at. It changes their perspective on it, and it feels more like real, even if the house value drops, at least it's still a house. Like, But
in terms of net worth, which ultimately represents your freedom at any given time, that's not true, right?
Yeah.
Like the housing market and the value of your house changing is just as damaging as the stock market and the value of your brokerage account changing overnight. You can hold both until, things get better. But at the end of the day, today, you have reduced freedom and reduced options if the value of your house falls. You now don't have the option to sell at the same level that you could before.
Or
and
quit your
access
job
that cash.
because you have to pay for the mortgage now.
And I think part of our reason is like, we like being able to just change on a dime, like move to Hawaii, just get up and do whatever. And so we always want to have the option to like for some people, their perspective is like, I live in this house and I'm going to live in this house for 20 more years plus, or till the day I die, right? If you are that person, you're that sure, you should probably take the biggest mortgage you can and invest the rest in the stock market. We are not those people. So that's part of the reason why we don't want to do that. We want to have maximum freedom at all times. So a little bit lower risk portfolio provides more freedom and certainty today in exchange for less money in some distant future And since we already kind of think we're going to end up with too much money in the future anyway, we'd rather just have the certainty today and a lower risk portfolio.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I'm kind of the opposite. We did buy our house for cash almost 2 years ago. Almost 2 years ago today, actually, and we did a cash out refi because I believe over the long term we'll make more money. We'll have more money over the long term, and it's a little bit different for us. There's not the risk for us because my wife still works, so we still have income coming in. And when you were talking, I thought a lot about the sequence of returns risk, which is what a lot of early retirees worry about. You stop working and then the next day there's a huge drop in the market. But for me, that wasn't a huge worry because we're going to do the refi and then we'll still have income coming in for at least a couple of years after that. I don't like having all my money in an illiquid asset either. It's if my money's in the index fund, I can get it out the next day if I want to. Whereas a house, it's a little bit more difficult. But yeah, I've learned not to argue with people on these things because it's a very religious argument, right? I've had bad arguments on Twitter. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Stop. This is stupid. You should do what makes you sleep well at night. And for me, what makes me sleep well at night is knowing I'll have a bigger amount of money in 20 years from now because I did do this leverage. But we've also got a substantial nest egg too. So it's not like I wanted to retire with $1 million and no debt, and now we're almost up to $5 million, which is crazy. And we've got no use for it. I'm happy with my life as now, so we can take a little bit more chances. And maybe we wouldn't be as adventurous or take these risks if we were living closer to the fine line. But I don't know, for us, there's not that much risk.
So the key to everything you're saying there, though, is you're acknowledging that there is risk in taking leverage. There's additional risk in taking the leverage. And as long as you do that, you're good, right? But I worry about people who are out there who are just told repeatedly it's mathematically stupid to pay off your house in cash. And they don't understand that it means you can only get a higher return with higher risk. You're acknowledging that, so you're in good shape. But if you're doing this based on some advice you read on an Instagram post with no context, which a lot of people really are, then they're going to be just absolutely punched in the face by the market when a crash happens if they're like 2x leveraged on their house into the stock market. So I just worry about those people.
Yeah,
it should be a thoughtful decision, I guess. This came up on a podcast, this Animal Spirits podcast, and the question these two guys asked each other is, if you could get a mortgage at 0%, would you do it, or would you rather pay off their house? And the thing that surprised me was they're like, well, I'd rather pay off my house and even have an interest-free mortgage, which kind of surprised me because one of the ways I justify this to myself is I think interest rates probably will go up at some point. We have inflation, so I'd feel silly if I paid off like a 2.8% mortgage when I can make that in a bank account. At that point, it's a wash and the mortgage is kind of free if I put my money into that bank account. But the point these two people said was, I don't think I'd be able to control myself. If I put the money in the house, it's not there for me to spend, where if it was in my bank account, I might be tempted to go out there and trade in my car every 3 years or do stupid shit. I can't guarantee that I'm going to do intelligent things with that excess money the whole time. So that'd be another reason to err on the side of paying off your house if you don't feel you can have that. You have that self-control.
Well, aren't houses like historically like the only way that Americans like generate wealth because it locks up their money and
Terrifying.
People look at their house like a forced savings account. And like it's almost the only way they can hide money from themselves.
Yeah.
And so like, I mean, I guess if that's what you have to do to save money, then fine. But you should try to fix that psychological problem.
That's a different problem.
That's not the reason. That's not the reason we've done it.
Yeah.
And also to your point about having all your money tied up in a house, I do agree with that. Even when we bought that first $71,000 condo, we actually had more than double that in net worth. So like we felt okay dropping that amount of money, writing a check for that amount. But I agree with that. You definitely, like my scenario of like the guy who has $100,000 net worth and $100,000 house, that's for educational purposes only. I would not recommend that specific scenario.
Well, and I mean, to the point of like the market dips, right? We bought that house. That was the cheapest any house in that community sold for. And it was originally, the last time it had sold was like double that, right?
Yeah. So
it was, they were going for like 140 at the height of the.
I wrote this on Twitter and I don't remember the exact number, but it was something along the lines of like stop telling people real estate is a risk-free asset, because the people who bought our house before the previous owner, so 2 owners before us, paid, I believe it was 62%, something like that, more than the people they sold it to. So they took a giant bath on this property. And of course, that's because of the whole like housing market wave pre-2008 and all that stuff. Also, to your point earlier, you asked, what would you do if you could take a mortgage for 0%, right? I think that's a really interesting question. I think everyone should take the mortgage at 0%, unless you're the person who says like, I'm going to take that money to the casino or whatever.
Yeah.
Like then you should
leave it in the house.
Everyone should take the mortgage at 0%. But what to do with that money still depends on your risk tolerance. So if you're very risk intolerant, you're going to want to put that money into a savings account, a CD, or the bond market. And if you're risk accepting, right, then you'll just still do what you already do in today's market, which is put it into a stock market index fund. So like personally, if I was offered a 0% mortgage, I would gladly accept it and I would dump the money into bonds.
Oh, interesting.
How do you fall on this, Doug? I don't think we've ever had this conversation.
No. And well, I think generally on the have the mortgage, like we have a mortgage on this house, but we have talked about paying it off, understanding like the math and the dogmatic opposition that you often get from people. But the way you explained it makes a lot of sense. And it does, again, kind of redundant here, but basically you don't get a better return for no additional risk, right? There's a cost for everything and it may not be completely apparent and it just depends on what you want. And at the end of the day, Carl, you keep mentioning, you actually do want to earn more money, but then in the same passage, you also said, well, we have more than we need. So it's like a little, we'll have to talk later because those don't add up, right?
That's another whole topic too that I've thought about so much as well, is if you have way more than you need, let's say you have like 100x annual expenses saved, should you be 100% stocks or should you be 100% cash? Because I could make the argument both ways. 100% stocks because I don't care if there's a 50% dip or even a 75% dip. But I could say 100% cash because I don't care about making extra money, right? So you could actually make that argument either direction. I'm not sure which one is logical. Mm-hmm. I think once you start thinking about giving money away and doing good with it, the 100% stocks starts to become more appealing.
Because you could make more.
Okay.
Right. Yeah, it's hard because we ended up getting to these positions because we like accumulated and saved and had certain habits. So like those habits die hard. And it feels better like if you're kind of keeping score, even if you don't care that much. Like if you earn more money, then you're probably making some good decisions. Of course, you could take that to the extreme and then you end up making very weird decisions if you're trying to maximize your money. But at this point, I would say you should optimize more for just convenience. You're like, oh, I can make that problem go away super easy. I'm just going to pay a little bit more, which is the opposite of, traveling really cheap in a van because, there's some compromises you have to make, but occasionally you're like, you know what? Let's get the Airbnb with a big kitchen and you could like bake stuff for a couple days and then you're good to go.
And it is possible that those decisions for us may change some when we're at 50 times annual expenses or whatever it may be, so we're only just recently like crashing onto the shores of financial independence, right? And so we're still, I think, both very protective of our money and what we worked to accumulate. And that probably leads to some of the risk averseness as well. Because it was a lot of work to get here. Even though it was fun, it was a lot of time and effort. And so we don't want that to go away. Yeah. So
have to being like the operative word there. Like, I don't want to have to do it. But if it incidentally, we're able to grow our money. But we see other vans sometimes and we're like, oh, I could see like bougie us 10 years from now having one of these, vans with a kitchen in it.
Yeah. I don't think you will meet us in 10 years and find out that we have like 2 brand new $80,000 cars, one for each of us. But I can't say for sure that that's not true because I just don't know who 10 years from now me is. Like,
Yeah.
And so it's important to realize, really, with financial independence in general, the thing you're buying is options. When you become financially independent, you have way more options. And instead of shoehorning yourself in and saying, this is how I'm going to be for the rest of my life, realize that you're one of the few people who doesn't have to say that, right? Because people who have to work 40 hours a week for a living, they pretty much with good certainty can say like, well, I need to keep this job for as long as possible. I have to pay my bills. You don't have to do that. So your life can be completely different 10 years from now than it is today. And who knows, maybe ours will. I have my guesses about what it'll be like, but I try to stay open-minded.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like also when you're, like for me, having been raised like more frugally and budget minded, it definitely is like weird. Like, I don't know, you saying, I was like, I don't think that there's ever a universe I would have an like I feel like an $80,000 car, like that gives me anxiety to think about. Like, I don't know. I don't know that. I don't know. I don't think that could ever be
I just
me.
feel like there's better things you can do with the money than that, but
That's
who
true.
knows? I'll leave myself open-minded.
Nice.
Never say never.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're winding it down. Carl, do you have any other questions?
I don't have any. If you ever buy that beach house or Learjet, if 10 years, if that's what your life comes to, or 20 years, don't forget about the little people.
You've got enough money, Carl.
Yeah.
I suspect you'll have more by the time you're my age, which is great. I just want to still be a part of your lives. If it ends up in a Learjet or a mansion near Pismo Beach.
Uncle Carl. Yeah. Okay. So this has been fantastic, and we asked you a lot of broad questions. Is there anything else like we didn't ask you that you want to bring up?
No, this has been great.
Yeah.
We've talked about lots of stuff. And by the way, sorry if I was in debate mode at any point, because I feel like I definitely was in like opinionated debate mode at least like 3 or 4 times. That's my personality, and I love it. And I make the best friends when I can get in that mode with somebody and they like talk back. And we
As
have,
long
like,
as
a
they
deep
understand that you're not like being a dick. Like it's a
so I promise. I'm not
concerted,
I swear I'm not a dick.
if you say it, then it's fine.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, I didn't get that. I didn't get that feeling, but I especially on podcasts, I enjoy if there's debate and disagreement.
Yeah.
The thing that's really boring to listen to is like, yes, I agree.
Agree.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, me too. I mean, that's what Carl and I do in our normal shows. So yeah, it's great to bring up the points. And I think not that we disagree on the mortgage thing, but it's like, oh man, like I'm kind of leaning in your direction because we do value a lot of like the lower risk options.
Carl's
And,
shaking his head.
I think we're gonna hang out after this and have the real debate.
Take the debate offline.
It's really tough. It's really tough.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Anyway, it's been fantastic.
Yeah, it's been great.
Lauren, anything to add?
No, I feel like we did cover like everything, and it was nice because like it wasn't, you said you'd heard some of our previous like interviews and stuff. I feel like people get excited about certain aspects of like our journey, and then we stay on that topic for a long time, and then it's like, oh, that's the end of the episode, goodbye. And so I feel like we did a good job kind of covering all the
Yeah, you asked us about everything. We really have nothing more to share with the world.
Yeah,
we're
we're
gonna
done.
close up the blog.
this is it.
Speaking of that, so we'll put the links for everything and all your social media and whatnot, but where can people find you?
We're tripovalifestyle.com. That's Trip of Lifestyle on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok now, YouTube. Twitter's a little bit different. We're one character shy of having our name, so we're TOA Lifestyle.
Cool. Then we'll link it all up. Thanks so much. It's been a blast.
Yeah,
Thank
thanks
you.
for having us.
Thank you.
So Carl doesn't know about this, but can you tell us about the toaster strudels?
Oh, yeah. So we're both vegan, and we've been vegan since college. And so there were toaster strudels that I saw on an account that I follow that is called Big Box Vegan, and they share a lot of like random finds that happen to be vegan. Like Oreos are incidentally vegan, and so anytime the community comes across stuff like that, it gets shared and propagated throughout the like vegan community. So he posted about these toaster strudels, which have historically not been vegan, and there's one flavor. It's called Cinnamania, and it's new, and it's like toasters. It's
It's
Cinnamon
the
Toast Crunch
Crunch like,
crossover.
crossover
where like the
toaster
filling
strudel.
is like cinnamon sugar, I guess. And I was like, yes, we have to try this. But when you're traveling, there's no toaster ovens or toasters. There's microwaves at gas stations, but not toasters. And so I was like, Doug, at your house, do you happen to have a toaster? And would you mind if we toasted toaster strudels? But there aren't any in Longmont. So that particular flavor variety.
She made us drive to 3 grocery stores on the way here. So
Yeah. Well, we went to
Walmart,
King Supers and Safeway. And I've been to Walmart and been to Safeway like in Montana and in Idaho, and all of them had this flavor. And I was like, oh, it's going to be here. It was not here.
Sometimes Sam's Club has some obscure products like that. There's one I could think of that's right behind you. Actually, that's also vegan. It's called Nugs, these fake chicken nugget thing. Yeah, and Sam's Club is the only place I've ever seen them at. And it was just for a very short period of time. So I've got to go there. If I find Cinnamania toaster strudels, I will buy them and we'll have a taste test. That sound awesome. Doug, I could be a vegan, like Oreos and toaster strudels. It'd be
And nugs.
like
Did you like
shitty food.
nugs?
I did like them. They were fine. I went back to buy some more. We're going to try to make some chicken and waffles with them, a vegan version. And the nugs were nowhere to be found.
They've historically been like an order online only product. They
Target
also
has them.
They
Some Targets.
I think you can sign up for like a subscription with them where they send you a slightly tweaked recipe of nugs like every couple weeks. And they're like testing out and getting feedback on new formulations, or at least they used to do that when they were like new. So I don't know, but it's like a
The
subscription.
newest thing is they have dinosaur shaped nugs.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh, damn. I'm going to Sam's Club right now.
All right. I think that's pretty good. I'll give it a check. Carl, do you have any jokes handy?
I'm trying to think of one that's appropriate. Like 10 came to mind, but all of them are, it would be, kind of inappropriate.
How about Steven? Do you have a...
No, I'm not a canned joke kind of person.
Okay, Lauren, do you have one?
No, I'm trying to think of like, what have I said that's corny recently? And I'm like blanking.
She makes jokes without realizing that she's making jokes.
Yeah, people just
They just have
laugh
to
and I'm
come
like,
naturally.
oh, okay. That was a good one, I guess.
So I also have one that you can't tell, but I can say that the punchline is around, oh, you know what? I don't want to give it away because I might be able to tell it later. Although it's racy enough, I might not tell you guys, but I would just tell him because I don't want to offend anyone.
We're not easily
Sounds
offended.
like you guys need to start your own like rated X podcast for all that stuff.
We've talked about it, the Mile High After Dark.
Yeah.
It's a clothing optional one.
Be a paid available on OnlyFans, the new audio platform.